All right, I'm good. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Call the June zoning hearing board meeting to order. Andy, do you mind doing a roll call, please?
As well. So,
Here.
Here. Selling. Here. The solicitor and zoning officer also.
Awesome, thank you. Let's do the pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The board has had a chance to review the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
No move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Get into our first application, Z 2024-32. This application has requested to be continued. Sam, do we have a notice of this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received a letter from counsel Dennis Dunn, June 17th, 2025, and he has requested that the matter be continued to August 21st, 2025, which I believe is our scheduled hearing date in August.
I
They
love
ask
that.
that the letter be made part of the record and the matter be continued on a vote of the board.
The letter is entered. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the continuance until August 21st.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion is carried. Second application, Z 2025-13. This application has been requested to be withdrawn. Sam, do we have notice of this as well?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received a email from the applicant, Dustin Schaefer, this morning. And his request is to withdraw his variance request for the property at 18 Main Street. And I would ask that the board consider accepting that by a motion and approval.
All right, we'll enter that into record. We have a motion to withdraw this application.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, third application, Z 2025-173314 St. David's LLC, 720 Old Fern Hill Road, Westchester, PA, pertaining to subject property at 3314 St. David's Road in Newtown Square. Application is seeking variance from relief from sections 172-29B, subsection 4, 134-8A, 134-9B, 172-103B, subsection 1, 172-103F, subsection 3B, and 172-104A to allow for the redevelopment of the property for a single-family home and accessory structures. Applicant is also seeking special exception from sections 172-104E and 172-107A for a fence in the front yard and front yard setback. Applicant also requests relief from any other sections realized during the zoning hearing process and is located in the R1 zoning district. Any material? Is the applicant present? All right, come forward, please. Yes. Just make sure the mics are on. When the mics are on, please state your names. We'll get you sworn in.
John Finnerty. John, and then Finnerty is Finnerty.
My name is Mark Padula, professional engineer.
All right, Andy, is the file in order?
Yes, file is in order. You'll see on the overhead, the posting of the property. We also have a list of property addresses. That the notice that was prepared was sent to everyone within 200 feet of the property boundary. And we have a copy of the proof of publication identifying it's advertised properly on 2 separate occasions.
All right, Sam.
Mr. Chairman, based on the representation of our zoning officer, I'd ask that the application and all accompanying documents and exhibits along with that application be marked as Township Exhibit Number 1, that the list of residents within 200 feet of the subject property who receive notice of tonight's meeting be marked as Township Exhibit Number 2, and that proofs of publication within the Delaware County Daily Times in 2 consecutive weeks be marked as Township Exhibit Number 3. And of course, the picture of the posting of notice of tonight's hearing on the subject property be marked as Township Exhibit Number 4.
They're entered. Is anyone here entering as a party protestant or would like to make public comment on this application? Please come forward. Are you a party protestant or a public commenter? Did you receive a notice in the mail?
Yeah.
Okay. You understand the difference? Party protestant has the right to ask questions and has legal standing in the matter. Moving forward, depending on the application or the outcome tonight, public comment would be just reserved to the end, just to make comment about the application and do not have legal standing moving forward. Doesn't necessarily mean you're against it, but if you want to enter as a party protestant and you are nearby and you received a notice, then you have that option. I would. So you would party protestant. Okay. We get your name and address and get you sworn in as well. Is it on? Can you just make sure the mic is on? Or a light, maybe? All right, cool.
BRIDGET.
You? Okay.
Mr. Hyde, can you give us your address, please?
Andy? Andy? I don't have anything. I don't have anything.
You don't have a,
Well, I don't have any folder on it now. Don't have one either.
Mhm.
Doesn't have one either.
yep.
Oh, cool. All right. Go ahead and walk through your application. We'll let them start and then we'll give you some time to ask questions and respond accordingly. Sure. Go ahead.
Is it one exhibit or do you have multiple?
One packet.
It's one packet.
One
There are
packet.
multiple.
Can we mark that applicant exhibit number 1?
Okay, you have a number of requests. Let's just start a walk through the overview of the project we're looking to do and then address each of the different variances or special exceptions requested.
Sure. Good evening. My name is John Finnerty, and I'm the owner of 3314 St. David's Road. I'm here this evening with Mark Padula, Padula Engineering. I recently purchased this property with the intent of developing it with a new construction home. I initially met with Andy, the zoning officer. He recommended I meet with an engineer to identify any zoning issues that need to be addressed. We've identified these issues and presented them to the board. This is my first experience with this process, so I was unsure of how best to prepare, but I prepared explanations for each variance. A quick overview of the project. We have a plot plan here that shows a new construction home with a detached garage and pool option. In the last 2 years, I've constructed 2 other homes with similar footprints to what we are proposing. In the exhibits before you, Exhibit 1 is a new construction home with a 2-story detached garage I recently completed right here in Newtown Square. Exhibit 2 is another home I constructed with a 2-story detached garage that has a very similar lot layout and driveway. Both homes are approximately 5,300 square feet. Homes in this particular area range anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 feet. At this property, I would like to construct a 4,500 square foot home. I believe what we are proposing will fit the lot nicely and blend in with the neighborhood. Now I'd like to review the variances and discuss our reasons for relief. The first variance, to permit the total impervious surface to exceed 25% of lot area. Due to the uniqueness of this property, it being on a high traffic road, we would like to provide ample parking for visitors. The width and length of the driveway has been increased to accommodate additional off-street parking. Additionally, for safety reasons, we have drawn in a turnaround so that drivers do not have to back out onto St. David's Road, especially for delivery vehicles. The second variance, to permit a maximum permissible disturbed area of steep slopes to exceed 15%. We propose to remove the current horseshoe driveway due to safety concerns, which happens to be within the steep slope areas. PennDOT, I did inform PennDOT of the project, and they said that the driveway needs to be placed where we currently show it. They also agreed that it would be best to remove the lower driveway entrance for safety reasons. Exhibit 3 is a completed mirror image example of what we are proposing. We would prefer to have the garage to be on the high side of the property to minimize the slope of the driveway. The next variance is to permit finished slopes in excess of 3:1. We're looking to minimize the impervious coverage, the distance between the proposed dwelling and the proposed driveway, minimized, resulting in less area for grading. Slope of 2:1 was required to fit the area between the proposed driveway and the proposed dwelling. This is an example of one variance affecting another. Mark, the engineer on this project, drew the plan to have the house as close to the front restriction line as possible to minimize the impervious coverage, which results in a steeper slope in that section of the front yard. Next variance is to permit a private garage to exceed the 1,000 square feet in area and 17 feet in height. In our current work environment, many individuals work from home. Several previous clients that I have asked for office space outside of their preliminary dwelling. As you all know, sometimes people need some separate spaces. This is a good way to accommodate that, and I want to provide an available option for that. Exhibit 4 is the architectural plan for the 2-story garage that is shown in Exhibit 1 that we recently completed in Newtown Square. Now, I do understand that Radnor Township's ordinances may differ, but I do have some prospects that have seen this garage and would like it to be built on this particular property. The garage in Exhibit 4 is 26 feet tall to the ridge. Placed on this property, it would be Frenched into the hill and appear to be about approximately 19 feet tall from the rear. In building a detached garage, I believe it's important to have the garage scaled appropriately to the size of the house as shown in Exhibit 1. In going through this detail, I did see that the 1,008 square feet was over the allowed. That is because we already had these garage plans completed, and I felt the 8 square feet to be de minimis. Next variance is to permit an accessory structure to be within the setback lines if the building is located at least 10 feet further back from the street line than the rearmost portion of the main building. The proposed garage is situated 10 feet behind the main portion of the rear of the proposed dwelling, but not 10 feet behind the sunroom that is proposed on the back of the dwelling. If the township determines that the garage needs to be situated 10 feet behind the sunroom, a variance would be requested from this section. The intent of this variance is to minimize the amount of impervious coverage. Moving the garage forward would require less driveway. If we push the garage further back, it will go further into the steep slopes and also increase impervious coverage. Again, balancing ordinances, trying to keep any disturbance to a minimum and still be aesthetically pleasing. The garage is still 10 feet behind the rearmost corner of the main house. Next variance is to permit a fence closer to the street than the frontmost portion of the dwelling unit. Since the property is situated on St. David's Road, we are requesting a special exception to place a fence along the front of the property to ensure safety of occupants and visitors. Exhibit 5 is an example of a similar fence, as well as 2 stone pillars that we are proposing on this plan. Also shown on this plan are 2 optional gates to help address any potential safety concerns for future prospective buyers. Moving on to the special exceptions, the first special exception is requested to permit a safety and privacy screen or fence along the front of the property. That's really kind of the same thing as the last variance. And lastly, a special exception, if determined by the township to be required, is requested to permit the proposed dwelling to be set back 76 feet from the existing right-of-way. This section addresses existing setbacks. The existing dwelling on this property is set back from the right-of-way 77.2 feet. The proposed dwelling will be set back 76 feet from the right-of-way. The dwellings on either side of this property are slightly forward and slightly behind the existing dwelling on this property. We believe that what is proposed, the proposed setback conforms to this section. If the township determines that it does not, a special exception is requested to permit the proposed dwelling to be set back 76 feet from the right-of-way. In summary, as you can see, some of the variances affect others, and we're trying our best to balance them all to obtain the minimum relief necessary to construct a home that is aesthetically pleasing and fits the neighborhood. I brought my engineer, Mark Padula, to provide expert testimony that is required to be on the record. Mark, anything to add?
You have planned testimony or anything, or is here for questions?
Do you have any questions?
Any
of the
additional
applicant?
questions? I had a couple. Any initial ones? Off of what he said. Let's go ahead and, do you have any questions based off of that so far? Okay. Let's go ahead and have yours, sir, and then we'll ask our questions.
My name's Mark Padula again. I'm a professional engineer with Padula Engineering. You want proof of education or anything like that?
You have a resume, you want to submit it as your testimony is as an expert?
Yes. I can give a summary real quick of that if you'd like.
You have any objection to him serving as an expert? Would you like to see his credentials? Okay, I think we'll mark your CV as applicant's exhibit number 2.
It doesn't sound like it is. does it? How about now? Okay. All right, excuse me, could we go to the first plan? I just want to start with the property, kind of give you an overview of where the property is and what the unique features of the property are and why we're here this evening. You may know the property is situated at 3314 St. David's Road. It is just under 40,000 square feet. There was an existing dwelling situated near the center of the site. As John mentioned about the loop driveway, there's a driveway access to the north and another one at the south. And then the loop driveway is connected between the two. The other point I want to point out is the steep slopes. There's steep slopes in the southwest portion of the site, extends about halfway up to the middle of the site. And then additional steep slopes to the southeast, again, extending well into the site. Just for context, that's about 47% of the site is covered by steep slopes. So that's one of the issues that's generating the need for the variances. I think the other reason is the lot size. Again, we're 40,000 square feet. Minimum lot size for the zoning district is 60,000. So what we did was we proposed a demo of the house, remove the driveways, and then construct a new home. Could you, next page, please? Thank you. So what we have is we have the proposed driveway in the northwest corner of the property. And we bring the driveway in and across the front of the property and connect it to proposed south side of the house. As John told you, PennDOT said that the driveway needs to be where we have it shown for site distance and safety reasons. Bringing it across the lot allows us to increase the driveway elevation from the road to the house. And I should have gone, let me go back real quick. So along St. David's Road, the property goes up rather quickly. It's rather steep in that area. And that's where we start encountering the steep slopes. So to address the steep slopes, a longer driveway allows us to change grade without having a driveway that's too steep. So by having an extended driveway on a lot that's undersized to begin with, our impervious coverage starts to go up rather quick. And that's why we need the relief for the impervious coverage. So can you go back again? Thank you. So the driveway comes up across the front of the property and connects to the south portion of the house. The new house is proposed in the middle of the lot. And then we have a pool and a detached garage proposed to the rear of the house. As I mentioned before, 47% of the lot is steep slopes. And the lot is undersized, so anything we propose to do on the lot, we're going to impact the steep slopes and increase the impervious coverage to manage steep slopes as we're trying to access the home. So I know John went through the variances, but I'll just go through them real quick. Explain to you what's causing them to be needed, and then I can answer any questions. So the first variance is with regards to the impervious coverage. You permit 25%. We're at 28.5%. If this lot was 60,000 square feet, we would be fine. We would be under the 25% threshold. But because the lot's 40,000 square feet, which was an existing condition prior to John Finnerty buying the property, we need the variance for the impervious coverage. The next one is with regards to the disturbance of steep slopes. Like I said, 47% of the lot is covered by steep slopes. To do anything on the lot is going to require disturbance of steep slopes. What we've done is we've minimized that, as John said, by trying to condense the development as close and as tight as we can. But we still have disturbance in the steep slopes. Third variance is with regards to finished steep slopes. Your ordinance permits a finished slope of 3 to 1. That basically means for every 3 feet you go horizontally, the grade can change 1 foot vertically. Again, to minimize the impervious coverage, we've tightened up the driveway and the house. And what we've done is we've created an area between the house and the driveway where the slope exceeds 3 to 1. It's 2 to 1. The 2 to 1 slopes are permitted by the Conservation District and they can be stabilized. So we do think that the variance for that slope should be granted. The fourth variance is the private garage. What our opinion is here is that because the lot is undersized, the size of the footprint of the house is limited. We've narrowed the footprint down as much as we could, and with the The detached garage, we saw an opportunity to pick up living space above the garage without increasing the footprint and adding more impervious coverage to the property. So that's why we're asking for the height of the garage to be increased from 17 foot. The fifth variance is in regards to accessory buildings. Accessory buildings are to be located within the building setback unless they meet 3 criteria in the ordinance. The one, that real quick. If the building is entirely separated from the main building, ours is, our garage is separated. B, if the building is located at least 10 feet further back from the front street line than the rearmost portion of the main building. That's where we're going to need relief. The third requirement is that the building is set back at least 5 feet from the rear and side property lines. We do have the building more than 5 feet from the side. It's actually like 19 and a half. Where we fall short is the 10 feet from the rearmost portion of the house. If you notice the house, in the center of the house to the rear, there's a bump out. That's a sunroom. That's the rearmost point of the rear part of the house. We're not 10 feet further back with the garage from that point. What we did do is we placed the garage 10 feet back from the main portion of the house. So again, like John is saying, we're trying to balance the needs of the ordinance and try to meet the requirements. I think the spirit of the ordinance was trying to say to get the accessory building as far back as you can from the house, but no less than 10 feet. And where the house is closest to the accessory, we've accomplished that. So if you don't feel that that's meeting the spirit of the ordinance, then we're requesting that variance so we can construct it as shown. Then our final variance request is for permit a fence closer to the street than the frontmost portion of the dwelling unit. So we could put a fence in the front yard up to the front of the house and straight across from north to south. And that meets the code. But I'm sure many of you are familiar, St. David's is very populated. I mean, it gets a lot of traffic. And John's feeling that a fence along St. David's would provide additional safety to the residents of the home. So that's why we're asking for that variance. Then in addition to those 6 variances, there's 2 special exceptions that we requested. And like John said, the first special exception is the same one for the fence. So your ordinance actually says with a special exception, you can put a fence in the front yard. Just read it to you real quick. This is section 174, 104E. Says safety and privacy screens along highways or busy streets may allow for the construction of a fence, wall, hedge, or similar object or structure in the front, side, or rear yard. If approved by the zoning board by special exception, so long as the safety issue implicated in the site triangle are abated as set forth in section 172-102. So special exception exists and permits the fence. So we need a variance and the special exception. I think the special exception kind of supports the need for the variance or our request for the variance. The final special exception is with regards to front yard setback. Now, your ordinance has a section. This is section 172-107, is existing setbacks. And what this means in a nutshell, before I explain it to you, is, can we go back again? The existing home is 77.2 feet back from the right-of-way line. So that corner, the corner of the front of the garage, which would be the northwest corner, is 77.2 feet back from the right-of-way. Your ordinance says, whenever in any zoning district, the present setback of existing buildings is greater than the minimum provided. So the minimum provided I take to be 75-foot front yard setback. This setback is 2.2 feet greater than that. So it's saying whenever you have this situation, you are to maintain that setback for any new construction. So per the ordinance, we're required to have a front yard setback of 77.2 feet. We're proposing 76. The 76 is still inside the building envelope, so it meets code there. But the reason we're asking for the special exception is because if we push the house back further, then we're going to increase impervious coverage and we're going to disturb more steep slopes. So we're talking about difference of about 14 inches from where the existing house is close to the road to where we would be. I don't think that would be noticeable from somebody driving up or down the street at 45 miles an hour. And the neighbors on either side are situated further back and don't have a direct view of the front of our house. And I don't think they would notice a 1.5 foot difference in setback. So that's why we're asking for that special exception. So that covers all the variances and special exceptions. Want to go through, I guess maybe do some questions. If anybody has any questions, now would probably be a good time.
Mr. Mrs. Hyde, do you have any questions? You can wait, we can ask Art, and you can ask after that if that works. Okay.
Full question?
Yes. Is this design the exact design proposed or a notional design?
It's, you know, I have an architectural plan here that I'm proposing to build. Does that get tweaked, you know, a little bit, you know? I'm open to a discussion and talk about it, but that is what we're,
Okay.
you know, looking to build. I do have an architectural plan. That's that exact house that sits right on there.
Right. You do not plan on living here, correct? You're a builder.
I'm gonna
Resell
build
this.
it. I'm gonna build it to sell this.
You said you were not familiar with our variance process or any variance process.
Just this process. This is new to me, coming up and going through this.
So in your previous homes, you've not had to receive a variance at all. Okay. The home that's on there now, you chose not to renovate that?
Yeah, that home is, it is trash. It's,
Mhm.
it's gone.
It's the one that says to be demolished. There's a sign.
Yes,
On
and
there,
then the
correct.
fire department ability to do safety practice and cut stuff apart. Structurally, I had somebody go through and look at it. It's foundation's trash. Like it's a tear down.
Mhm. Can you talk more about the office space requested above the garage? And why you think that's required versus, I get the aesthetics of the height request.
Yeah.
But a detached separate dwelling with planned living space is not something we typically approve versus using that space for storage.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I just, you know, as Mark mentioned, it just in terms of finished square footage of the house. And then also I've built a few homes in the last 3 years that people are looking to.
Sure.
Just people are working from home these days, and husband and wife both working in the same house, or kids or whatnot. And it's popular that people would like to just go out, go up a set of steps and be separate and be able to be working from home, but still after the property. So that's just an option I would like to be able to provide. You know, the house that I did in Newtown Square is maybe less than 10 minutes from here that has that exact option. And I have some people that are interested in kind of picking that building up and popping it in 10 minutes down the road.
Is one of the variances requested, I understand there's one for the height. Is there also a separate, is it a special exception for a dwelling, or is that just required for storage?
He'd need a variance.
You need a variance for that, right?
Office space.
Yeah.
We only allow storage.
Correct. That's the special exception coverage would allow for storage.
That's correct.
Variance for the height. If you are requesting living space or an office, it would require an additional variance.
Yeah, because, right, it becomes
Right.
habitable.
Correct.
That's the difference.
Any plumbing plan if it were?
No, just just a staircase, carpet, drywall, just a desk, somebody to be able to get out of.
Understand our ordinance of storage.
Gotcha.
Understood. Okay, we
So,
can,
yep. And yeah, and then not to go into the aesthetics of it, you want it to be scaled right. If you build,
I get that.
4,500 square foot house, you want it to look correct,
Said the impervious surface request or the variance for impervious surface was due to the driveway. That added because of the additional driveway square footage, trying to mitigate the slope, added the square footage overage. If you remove the pool, would that put you under?
So the thought process there that I had was, potentially, I do have some people that are interested in that property with a detached garage and a pool. Could we reduce the size of the pool? Yes. The thought process there is if you're going to go through the expense of putting in a stormwater management facility, you don't want to go put in a stormwater management facility that is, a certain size now, and then have to circle back in 2 or 3 years and the homeowner's living there and says, hey, I would like to do a pool. They have to then come through here and go through the process. And not only do they need the exception for the, to build the pool 3 years from now, but then they also need to put in a secondary stormwater management bed or something else that's bigger. So the idea was, hey, can I, talk about this now to be ahead of it, to build a stormwater management facility that can accommodate that amount of impervious is one of the thoughts there. Can that be reduced a little bit? Sure. Is the footprint of the garage is the footprint of a garage that I just did 10 minutes down the road. Could that be, reduced by, a foot or something? Sure. The driveway, one of Mark's points on the driveway, just the radius and coming up the driveway, we have it at 12 feet. Just coming up the radiuses, you want it wide enough to be able to accommodate the turns and coming in off of St. David's Road safely. So those are some of the things that we're navigating.
For that stand on the low side.
Say it again.
You have no steep slopes on the eastern side of the property. And so in order to put the driveway the way you show it, you're bucking grade. And you're increasing the impact to the steep slopes, and you're increasing impervious surface. If you kept the driveway entrance where you show it, as PennDOT suggests, and wrap the driveway along the eastern property line and put the garage, I have a question about the garage too, put the garage on the lower side, you would eliminate the impact of the steep slopes and you would reduce the amount of impervious coverage.
I'm not following. So the driveway is in the northwest corner,
On the high side of the property.
right?
Right.
And
So you're
PennDOT said
bucking
had to be
grade.
there.
You're going up and you're encroaching into the steep slope. If you put it on the low side of the property, you wouldn't buck grade and you would stay out of the steep slopes.
PennDOT requires it to be.
I'm not suggesting you move the location, the entrance where it's St. David's Road.
Right, okay.
I'm suggesting keep that location and just wrap it along the eastern property line. Where there's no impact to steep slopes and there's no, you
You're
would have
saying
less.
keep
impervious.
it parallel to St.
Parallel to
St.
the
David's.
property owned by Robert Selly.
All right, that's northern property. I'm sorry.
That's the
That's
north.
northern
I
property.
apologize.
Okay.
So, but I mean, the way you have the garage on the high side where you have the most impact to steep slopes. If you kept it on the low side, you would completely stay out of steep slopes. Correct?
We'd stay out of steep slopes, but our driveway would be very steep. Can we go to the next sheet, please?
Yeah,
I just have one more question about the driveway, so, I mean, you can consider that. So I assume that if you put it on the low side, you could also do a garage under the home,
That would be. a
as
question for
opposed
John.
to having the detached, correct?
That's a question for the builder.
Okay.
But the difference in elevation,
Because everything, all the accessory type structures that you have, the pool, the garage, and the way you get to access the garage is all on the side where all the slopes are.
Right.
Instead of maybe sliding the home over and keeping all the accessory
We can't
structures
slide
out
the-
out of the steep slopes.
the home goes from one side to the other. It's-
Right.
You're saying mirror the home. We can't slide the home at all.
You would have less impact to steep slopes if you slid the home and kept all your accessory structures on the north property line.
So the side yard setbacks on this property, there's 40 foot on the one side and 45 foot on the other side. So that I can't, and we have it within the envelope, there's 65 feet. The house that we're showing there is 64 feet. So I can't slide the home any further left or right on the property.
I think
Yeah.
you would reduce your number of variance requests.
So the other thought process here is I typically always have, you know, and the home that we're suggesting or proposing to build is, you know, a typical house that has the garage on the high side, and typical houses, the garage is on the high side where you can pull into your garage, go one step up and you're right into your kitchen versus, you know, putting the garage in the basement, you know, and then
Well, I mean, that is a matter of convenience, but I mean, here we're talking about impacts.
and then also the steep slopes, trying to, if I have a shorter driveway, trying to climb up to be able to raise the grade, to be able to get the driveway a little bit higher on that left side.
75 feet. Not quite sure I understand how the driveway slope would be so great.
Well, the
Well,
difference
at
between.
75 feet,
between
you
this
take it
corner,
from-
that corner of the house
12
is
feet.
332. Our
Right,
finished floor is
332.
339. So we have 7 foot difference. And like you
Right.
said, it might be a matter of convenience, but most people want to enter their house at or close to the finished floor of the house. So I can't argue that point. I mean, yeah, if we put a garage underneath, we can eliminate some of that grade. But we can't enter the first story of the house doing what you suggested.
I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Can I follow up on what Andy
Yeah.
says? Because I'm not sure I'm 100% clear about your explanation. And I'm talking about the driveway now and the location of the driveway. Because this involves a variance of exceeding the 15% area of steep slopes to 77.8%. So it's very significant. So there's got to be ways to narrow that down. And I'm looking, and I'm not an engineer, so that's why I'm asking you. You say the PennDOT says this is where you have to enter. This is where we want you to put the entrance into the property. Okay. So, but then you wind the driveway all the way across the property up to the side of the house, instead of going straight up, which from what I look at, the topography involves less of the steep slopes than you encounter by winding it all the way around the house. So I don't know if that's an aesthetic reason you're doing that. But it seems that if you took it straight up, it could have significant reduction in this big amount of variance required in the steep slope area. So I'm trying to understand why that's not being considered here,
It was considered. If we come up the northern property line,
correct?
we only have the distance from the right of way to the house to get up to elevation 339.10, the finished floor of the house. The existing grade right now at that front corner of the house is 332. It's 7 feet lower than the proposed grade the house.
Well, what's it on the other side?
Pardon?
What's it on the other side of the house? Is it? Is
On
it
this side of the house,
It's 334, isn't it?
this elevation existing grade is 338, right here. So we're pretty much at grade where we're coming into the garage.
So that's the reason.
Correct.
And how much impact does this driveway location have on the amount of steep slope disturbance that you're having by coming up and wrapping around?
Can I make one comment on this?
Does this answer my question?
Well, yes, a good portion of it.
Okay.
I could minimize a lot of that disturbance by keeping that original horseshoe driveway and not really messing with what is all disturbed there, but the whole original idea is to get rid of that horseshoe driveway and eliminate it and regrade that front, but a good chunk of that is in the steep slope area. That's one thing that we're attempting to make it better than worse. Is to fill that cavity in.
Do you have any other comments?
So your question was how much steep slope disturbance is involved with the driveway? I'd answer that with a percentage. I'd say maybe like 10 to 15%.
Reduction,
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers. I'm just giving you an idea.
ballpark,
Ballpark, yeah.
okay.
We'd still be significantly impacting them, but less so.
Somewhat of I'm shifting gears now to talk about the 10-foot issue with where the garage is going to be located from the rear of the house versus a sunroom.
Okay.
And my understanding is from the part of the justification is that by pushing it placing it where you're proposing, that it will minimize the amount of impervious coverage. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how much will it minimize it?
I wouldn't say a lot. Figure it's 28 feet. You push it back another 8 feet, 28 times 8, 160, 224 square feet. So it increased by about 224 square feet.
All right. Going to take me some time to figure out that on a percentage of the whole thing.
That percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little late for me to do that on my own. You want to know it?
Well, how about a ballpark?
Ballpark? Can we go over, excuse me, can we go over the tables on the part of that left? Yeah. Scroll down a little bit so I can see it, please. The other way, I'm sorry. That's good right there. So every percent's about 397 square feet. So you're about 0.75% reduction.
Okay. Okay. I think the last question I have is now about the fence. And I'm looking at Exhibit 5 that you provided us. Okay, with the fence. And the justification, and this is what I'd like, just some comments or explanation on, is that fence being down by the road is to permit a safety and privacy screen. What safety and privacy do you get from this fence to the house? I mean, you say it provides safety and privacy.
I think it provides more safety than privacy.
In what way?
Well, if somebody's running down that hill, that fence will stop them before they get to the road. Or slow them down, let's say that.
Visually.
I guess.
And on the plan, not shown in that photo, there is optional gates that are shown. So if a prospect buyer does have a concern about safety with children along St. David's Road, that they have an option to have a gate at their driveway entrance, and then the front yard would be, safed off from children, pets, so on and so forth, not going out onto, a high traffic road.
Okay. And that's the safety.
And that's one example of a fence, just that there could be other examples of, yeah, that was a post and board fence, and, yeah, hey, we could put that in, we would be open to a discussion on options for fence.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Address the building.
I have just a couple of questions. So I think in your presentation, you obviously have all of these requests for variances, but in your conversation now, you appear to be more flexible about minimizing some of the requests. Shrinkage of the pool, maybe shrinkage possibility of the garage dimensions. So that would bring you much closer in terms of the impervious surface issue, correct? One of the concerns I think the board may have is your maximum permissible disturbed area is 77%, when the ordinance suggests 15%. So I think our code officer is asking you about minimizing the impact of that 77% with regard to consideration of that driveway to the higher side. Is that something you'd want to consider? You certainly, I don't know if the board is willing to make a decision tonight, but is that something you can go back to the drawing board about in terms
I
of?
would really like to consider, having the driveway come up and be on the high side of the lot, or some way to be able to have, when you pull into the garage, that you can go right into the house and not have, it any other way. And talking through that, there's absolutely a discussion to, hey, can we shrink the size of the garage or a pool, or tighten up the driveway a little bit? Like, I've talked with all the surrounding neighbors, including a couple here tonight. I'm absolutely flexible and negotiable, but there's certain things that I do want to be able to provide, as I have a few prospect buyers that want what is shown.
Okay, so I take that, I mean, you're not so flexible on that particular.
That particular,
Sam,
being able to have the garage, you walk right into your house.
Sam, I have a quick question with the garage, since you're on that. I know we talked about this a little bit. The position of the garage built outside the building envelope, how has that affected, Andy?
That's what the request is for. You can build it within 5 feet of a rear line or a sideline if you meet the 3 criteria in the ordinance. We meet 2 of the 3. One is it's completely detached. 2 is it has to be 10 feet behind the rearmost portion of the house. And the last one, forget it, I'll tell you in a second. Building is set 5 feet from the property. So we meet that one, completely separated. We're not 10 feet behind the rearmost portion of the house.
Okay.
That's variance
The-
number 5.
Agreed?
I think his explanation was correct, yeah. It's not where it's shown. It's not 10 feet behind the most.
It's not 10 feet behind the berm, so he's asking for a variance from that.
Yeah.
So just to return to the steep slope issue, the ratio 2 to 1, 3 to 1. So our ordinance provides provision that says if you can show that you can stabilize the situation, then we could consider the differential in the ratio. Can you explain on the record exactly how you're going to stabilize and maintain the sloped area so that it doesn't impact the property and the neighboring properties?
Sure. So the location that we're talking about is primarily right in front of the home here. And then there's a patch of 2.5 to 1 slope down here in the southwest corner. I mentioned earlier, Delaware County Conservation District, well, conservation districts in general, allow you to go to a 2 to 1 slope as long as you can prove you can stabilize it. Stabilization can be crown vetch, ivy, any kind of vegetation that doesn't require regular maintenance. You can mow a 3 to 1 slope. And I know, slope like that, you could use a weed whacker, maintain it if you grassed it, but There's a variety of landscape features that can stabilize that slope.
So your stabilization plan is landscaping.
Yes, yes.
And there was a mention of stormwater management. Are you doing, you have a plan for stormwater management with regard to the runoff?
We will. That's, but assuming we get through zoning, then we have to go to conditional use, and when we go to conditional use, we'll be designing that.
Well, I have, I think we dealt with some of the other issues. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The garage were attached, would that change any of the requests or has that been a consideration?
It wouldn't fit. It's in the side yard setback. Like John said, you guys require 40-foot minimum side yard setback with an aggregate of 85. Our envelope is, what'd you say it was?
65,
Mhm.
and the house is 64. So if we have a separate garage.
And
Yeah,
that's why I asked about the integral
Right.
garage coming in from Lakeside.
You said the 14 inches difference on the front yard setback. What does that 14 inches gain the building?
Again, it moves the house forward 14 inches. If we
Correct.
move it forward, there's a little less impervious coverage, a little less disturbance and steep slopes back in this area, the southeast corner.
What would be sacrificed if we pushed it within 14 inches
Push everything back 14 inches?
or reduced something by 14 inches?
I can answer that. We could reduce the patio by 14 inches and reduce the garage by 14 inches, and that would handle that. And that's the type of stuff that, like,
Sure,
I'm absolutely open door to talking through and go, no problem.
makes sense. Okay.
Shrink that up 14 inches, and
You
that.
get what we're saying, right? It's a
Yeah,
lot of
no,
requests.
It's a
and
lot
I
of
just feel
requests, and
like,
again, I'm willing to talk through it, and
Okay,
I want to appease. Again, I want it to be aesthetically pleasing. I want to appease everybody here. I want it to look nice for everybody at the township. The prospect buyers that I get that eventually buy it, I want it to be nice for all surrounding neighbors.
Mhm.
I just want to talk through it.
understood. Understand you want to put the best home there.
Yeah,
We need to make sure that's the minimum requested
I-
variances. So, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Hyde, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a quick question regarding there's a retaining wall in the back and and it's my understanding that the retaining wall is gonna drop, you're gonna drop from the back, the west side, east side of the property, will come, you know, with the height of the east side of the property will be higher by, I don't know, 10 feet at the northern edge of the property than the pool area and stuff like that. Is that all steep slope that's being, are you gonna grade out all that steep slope up there?
This is the largest thing right here.
Yeah. But what about, no, the retaining wall, isn't that a retaining wall on the back of the property? Where the secondary septic system is?
Here?
Yeah.
oh, no,
It's limited disturbance.
no, just a retaining wall just behind the pool. So the
Okay,
retaining wall is what, 30 feet back from the house.
okay,
There's everything back behind there. There's no retaining wall. That's all not going to be disturbed. That's the septic.
okay,
We're required to show limited disturbance on the property.
I got you.
We're using that line, I'm sorry, it looks like a wall, but it's an imaginary line. You wouldn't see it there.
Okay. Okay. Well, I had put together some comments,
Here.
for the last meeting, that got postponed, but if you don't mind me reading, I'll get through them. Our property sits about 35 feet off the northeast corner of this property. We look out onto the property from our living room and backyard, as we have for the last 10 years where we've lived in our house. You know, I'd like to start out by saying that we endured a project of similar magnitude next. Oh, sorry. I'd like to start out by saying we endured a project of similar magnitude next door to us a couple of years ago, and it upended our lives for a year, more than a year in different ways. So we're familiar with the impacts of these projects on the neighbors. And I understand that John says you may not build what is being asked for here tonight, but I think we need to assume that this is the plan going forward, and with that in mind, we would oppose it because the relief being requested is, in my opinion, due to an overambitious and inappropriate building plan for the property. The plan being shown is to build 3 times the square footage of the original residence on a lot that will clearly not accommodate that without extreme contouring of the lot and inordinate relief from the zoning code. Although I can back up a little bit on that comment because I thought the retaining wall went much further back. But the proposed garage alone with its 2 stories is more than twice the square footage of the original house in the property, and that lends some perspective to the scale of this proposed build out. I think the applicant had every opportunity to design a compliant structure with a scale that would conform to the challenges of the property, but instead chose a plan that pushes the limits of what this parcel can handle. You know, it's a 1 acre lot, and it is a challenging lot. But for the applicant to be granted the requested variances, the hardships he faces, as I understand it, must be inherent to the land, and that hardship must prevent a reasonable use of the parcel under existing zoning codes. But in this case, the hardship posed by the topography doesn't prevent a reasonable use of the property, as is demonstrated by the house that currently exists on the property, the one that is slotted for demolition. It's not the property's unique physical characteristics that are causing the need for the variances, but the inherent nature of the plan to overbuild the lot. In this case, the need for variances primarily stem from the applicant's desire to maximize the size and features of the development so that he can resell the property at a high enough price, understandably, to justify his investment. But that makes the hardship he faces not unnecessary, but rather a self-created hardship, and that, to my understanding, invalidates his standing in asking for them. As the existing house on the property proves, extensive variances are not necessary to enable reasonable use of the property, and the ones being requested by the applicant do not represent the minimum variance that will afford relief. Rather, they represent a level of variance that will support his plan. In addition to that, I think there's a question of the neighborhood character. In March of this year, the entire property was clear cut over the course of a few days, and some 35 primarily healthy, mature, even old as 100-year plus trees were felled and removed from the property, leaving no vegetation at all. This is significant because of from the looks of the plan for this parcel, the vast majority of those trees will not be replaced because there will be no room for trees given all the structures, hardscaping, retaining walls, and even steeper slopes needed to allow for the proposed development. You know, until recently, that parcel, we loved it. We loved it because of its wooded environment. There was so much vegetation. There was so much variation in the tree covers that we could not even see the house on the parcel for 6 months out of the year, as you'll see in page 1 of our exhibit. Now, the essential nature of the property has changed completely for us, and there's no natural screening on the property at all. I know that may change, but since the plan for the parcel proposes a retaining wall and secondary septic system in the corner closest to our property, there's a good chance there will be no screening replaced where it had been abundant for decades. Add to that a house that is 2 to 3 times as high as the 16-foot tall house currently on the property, and our experience will be changed completely. But that's not the only way the proposed plan will change the essential character of our neighborhood. By adding 5,000 square feet of structures and nearly 6,500 square feet of hardscaping, where a modest 1,700-foot house stood for 70 years, the plan will diminish our privacy and increase the potential for added noise and light pollution from the structures and hardscaping being proposed, thus further changing the visual and environmental character of our neighborhood. In support of this argument, I would refer to page 2 of our exhibit, an array of images I got off of the applicant's website, all showing large houses completely lit up at night with outdoor displays. I would also add that the parcels, darn it, I lost this, hold on. I apologize, here we go. In addition to that, oh, where is it? Okay. I would also add the parcels on the adjoining tracts to this property, the next three houses going up St. David's at 3312, 3310, and 3306 are all modest homes, descending in size from 2,200 feet to 1,900 to 1,700 feet. And they're all essentially on the same size parcel as 3314. That's the character of the St. David's neighborhood. It's not a 5,000 square foot property. And one note about the fence, and I did not see the fence, and I'm assuming it's a lower fence. I haven't seen the exhibit, but is that a lower fence that he's talking about putting up? I mean, could it be?
Yeah, the one in the picture is
Come up and
Yeah.
take it.
about a 4 foot high post rail fence.
I mean, he's,
That's.
Yeah,
he's not locked into that.
I think you're right.
Happy to share. I have another copy.
Okay.
That's a little different, but I would note that this particular, St. David's is a road where speeding is prevalent, and cars come flying up that road, and there's deer and fox habitually cross that property, and we see them all the time. And if we have a fence that they can't traverse, then they will be pushed onto St. David's, thus impacting public safety and health. You know, I will. I think I will leave it at that. You know, I think, well, one thing I would say is that I guess I would ask that I understand that you have to take into everybody's rights into account here, and I think the zoning code really is there to make that a fair process. And if we start deviating from it to create houses that are bigger than a property would support necessarily, or that is typical of that neighborhood, then the people like us will be the people who pay the price for the profits of the developer. And yes, it can be argued that a higher price on a nearby property might raise our property values as well. But for those of us who plan to live in this neighborhood for decades to come, rising property values typically only translate to higher taxes. Property values are great if you're flipping properties, but for those of us who want to live in an area for its quality of life, and, you know, property values are a benefit that can only be realized if you're prepared to give up your most prized possession, your home, and we don't want to do that. So anyway, it's our hope that you'll oppose the plan and side not just with the zoning code, but the property owners who live and work here. And that's all we have to say. Thanks.
Mr. Howard, are you offering this as an exhibit, your exhibit?
Yes,
The record?
please. Yeah.
Okay, can we mark this as protesting exhibit number 1? Can I have a response?
Yeah, or if you guys have something first, but I would like to just report back of, like, you know, I can understand some concerns. But you know, it just, as we go to build this thing, I want it to fit the neighborhood. I want to, you know, talk through exactly what we're doing. They mentioned trees and taking some trees down to be able to develop the property. Yes, there was some trees that were taken down on these exhibits. There's trees not shown. I did meet with them at their house yesterday and explained that we would be open to a discussion of any number of trees, or a discussion of trees that line the property that are going to, you know, be replanted to be able to infill, you know, over the years to come. So planting trees, not a problem, and the discussion that can be had is to plant them around the perimeter of the property. You can, as you can see here, there's plenty of ground there around where the septic fields are, to be able to plant trees going all around the perimeter. The neighboring houses, you know, what we're proposing to build here at 4,500 square feet, there are homes that are up and down St. David's Road and on their street and next to them and across the street from them that are
On St. David's.
on St. David's.
The three next to us are 1950s, 1960s, 2,000 square foot. But the next two up on the same side as our ground have been developed as larger homes. and they're on lots that are similar in size to ours. So there's 6 lots there. There's ours, there's 3 little ones that he mentioned, and then there's 2 up at the corner. 2 up at the corner have big houses, the next 3 have smaller houses, and ours is, we're trying to build a house. So it's not all little ranches.
And what I have shown there, you know,
How do you compare as lot size with those houses you're quoting?
How do I compare?
In other words, your lot size is 1 acre, 1.094,
Right,
and the other ones are,
they're getting larger, but they don't hit 60,000. Each one of them is a little larger than the
I understand, but I guess what I'm driving at is yet the houses around you are larger. I mean, some of those houses are, small estates. However, I think they're built, I think our problem here, at least my problem here, is you're building what size is this gonna be?
I was looking to build 4,500 square feet.
Because I'm looking at, you have here,
That include the garage? That include the garage?
It's living space, 4,500 square feet, and then what this is showing is 4,500 square feet and a 2-car garage. So, and 64 feet wide. I do, if you guys would like to see it, I have an architectural plan right here. I'd be happy to show you of what that is.
you have here, a dwelling is gonna be 3,015 square feet. That's the ground floor.
That's the,
Can we go to the table on the left again, please?
That's what I'm looking at the table.
Says 3,000.
It says the dwelling is 3,015 square feet. Okay, so is that 2-story? So is that 6,000?
Attached garage.
Including, but no, you have the garage is another
That's-
1,008 square feet.
Yeah.
It says the dwelling is 3,015 square feet
Right.
floor.
Garage here.
There's an attached
An
garage
attached-
and a detached.
an
garage.
attached
Okay, so
garage.
you have
Yes,
okay,
yes. So the footprint of the main house, say, is 3,000 square feet on the plot plan. The architectural plan, it's 4,500 square feet of living space and a 2-car garage. So the first floor, and I could show you the architectural plan.
okay.
It's just that if the 4,500 square feet subtracts out the square footage of the 2-car garage.
Got I recommend we leave this, this application open. I think things could be changed to reduce the, request, to reduce the number of variances. I feel like there's just, trying to put something and just requesting all of the variances necessary without making the necessary changes to reduce that and considering it a minimum amount of requests being made. I recommend we leave the record open. I'd like to see some changes made to this and come back and be presented at the next month's meeting. I could require or suggest working with your neighbors a little bit closer and trying to come to approaches on the trees, have a plan for the trees along the property line, how that will be affected. And then at least discuss it. Not saying you have to agree before the next, but be aware of what's going to be taking place
Sure.
along the property lines and come back and hopefully reduce the number of requests on both the special exceptions and the variances. Okay.
So, you can help with that upgrade.
Sure.
The types of trees that. Help everybody.
Sure, that's a great suggestion. Happy to do so. And happy to talk to you guys about it. All right, so we'll just leave everything open.
Just leave it open,
Back in a month.
come back, rework it, and we'll represent next month.
As a suggestion, if we're gonna continue this so that you can revisit the plan a little bit in
Yep.
accordance with the recommendations of the board, you may want to talk to Andy. Some of the issues pertaining to the driveway and the steep slope.
Sure. Schedule a meeting at some point within the next week or so, we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
if you take all of this. Input.
Yep.
Digest it such a way as you can make some recommendations and come back and see what we can do to minimize the impact. Then the board might take a different look at it.
I know you don't want to invest maybe too much, but an elevation, or you said you had one, would be helpful to see. Just to picture the the property and the ultimate height of the house and how it would fit, versus just an aerial view.
Show some elevation of what the garage.
Not to be exact, but just to see the height and what we're talking about from, instead of just an aerial view that we have here.
Sure.
Would help me speak for myself.
Yeah.
Great.
Fair
All
enough.
right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
We didn't come.
Thank you all for your patience.
Unfortunately. Thank you all.
All right, moving on. Application Z 2025-19, Foreman Sign Company, 10447 Drummond Road, Philadelphia. Obtaining subject property at 3606 Westchester Pike, Newtown Square. Seeking variance relief from sections 172-123A and 172-124D to allow for signage over what is allowed. Also requests relief from anything uncovered during the zoning hearing process located in the C1 zoning district. Applicants, all applicants? Okay. Can we swear them in, please?
Marty Jacobson, Foreman Signs.
Doug Franklin, Identity Resource. Doug Franklin, Franklin. Company is Identity, IDENTITI.
Dr. Kevin Mathis, MATH. I'm the doctor at the location.
Ibby Gunter, IBBY. Ibby, IBBY, GUNTER is the last name, and I'm with my eye doctor.
Yes. All right, Andy, is the file in order?
File is in order. You'll see on the overhead that property was posted with the placard advertising tonight's hearing. We also have a mailing list that the notice was mailed to all properties within a 200-foot boundary. And we also have a proof of publication showing that the advertisement was posted in the Delco Times on 2 separate occasions.
Chairman, based on the representation of our zoning officer, I ask that the application and all accompanying documents with that application be marked as Township Exhibit number 1. The list of residents being notified within 200 feet of the subject property of tonight's hearing be marked as Township Exhibit number 2. The proofs of publication from the Daily Times on 2 consecutive weeks be marked as Township Exhibit number 3. And the picture of the posting of the property for tonight's hearing be marked as Township Exhibit number 4.
Okay. Entered into the record. Is anyone here acting or want to be a party protestant or here to make a public comment on this application? No, perfect. Okay, please walk us through. Okay.
Okay, I'm the Director of Construction and Facilities for my eye doctor. We have over 800 locations in 26 states, and we're very excited to have opened this location in Newtown Square in April. Currently, we are asking simply to reface the existing signage that is there with our branding. I'll let Dr. Mathis, who performs work in the office day to day, speak to the issues that we're facing right now by not having highly visible signs.
Thank you. Being in the clinic, every day, especially patients coming by, we have multiple that miss our office and have to do a U-turn in Westchester Pike, as you know, especially right there. Especially those coming off of 252, which is a very busy intersection. We're right. You have the gas station and we're right there. So a lot of people miss that turn. Sadly, they have to go do a fairly dangerous U-turn to get to the other side of Westchester Pike to come back and come through the line. So without those signs, also because of that direction, we do have the sign on the building, but a lot of people just can't see that due to the speed of Westchester. but really just wanting people to be able to find us. We really want to be a big part of the community here. We're excited to be here. And also just for that safety aspect of, Westchester Pike being such a big, busy road, and just making sure that our patients can get in safely to us.
I'm,
Okay.
So may be able to help fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah.
Definitely. But a permit was filed, for the property, these signs, because they have a number of existing non-conforming signs. I was only able to approve the existing wall sign that
Okay.
is currently up. The freestanding or pylon sign coupled with the wall sign would have put it at 81.2 square feet versus the allowable 50. So that's the variance that's being requested for the additional square footage, as
Okay.
well as the directional signs that you see on the screen. They exceed both the height and the area. The area is allowable is 2 square feet and 2 feet in height. And plan, if it's the same, proposes 3 square feet. And at the time I did the review, the height wasn't shown, so I don't know what that.
so there's the big sign, which is what? Existing sign that's on
49.67 square feet.
Needs
Is it
green.
green?
The existing pylon is 49.76 or 67 square feet.
So in addition to that, there are directional signs and parking signs, I believe,
There's a
throughout the property.
Yeah, the way it's directed here, you have an enter only and an exit only. And those signs are just there, of course, as you're coming down Westchester Pike fairly quickly, making sure you come in the right one way.
And are they just enter and exit signs?
Yeah,
Because,
exactly what you see here. would
no,
be
no,
what-
let me finish. Because there's only room enough for one car to get in and out. There's not enough for 2 lanes for cars going each way.
That's correct.
Okay. So how much square footage are those signs?
The one on the screen is 16.33 square feet. And then the exit sign is,
See, I saw all this stuff. There's two signs here, right?
that's the entry sign. And then the exit sign is just over 3 square feet.
So are there 2 of each?
No,
Just one of each?
one of each.
One
correct,
exit, one entry?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what are they again?
16.33 square feet on the entrance and 3.08 on the exit.
15.33 on the enter?
16.33.
16, did you say?
Correct.
Okay. And then the exit's about 1/5 the size of that?
Correct. And those were all existing prior to my eye doctor coming in.
Okay. And then additionally, you have some parking signs? Or are they not included in a part of this application?
They're not included.
All right, so those are the only signs we're dealing with?
Correct. The wall sign, which was approved, was about 12.6 square feet.
Sorry?
The wall sign that's currently on the building that was
If it's
approved in
existing.
permitting is 12.6 square feet.
Okay.
The parking signs, though, are listed in this packet, though, correct? Customer parking signs?
Correct, but it was not part of the variance that we were asking. The variance was
Why not?
the square footage. The parking signs are currently up.
Correct, but Andy, the 82.1,
Andy?
Andy,
81.2.
81.2 would be the aggregate in it, including what is on the building today, plus all of what's being requested.
Yeah, I calculate. I it's broken down. So sign S1, which I believe is the wall sign, that was approved, is 12.68 square feet. The M1 signs, apologize, I got, which are these square signs. I had them calculated 16 square feet. The M2 signs were 3 square feet. And the P1 sign, which is the pylon sign, was 49.6 square feet. I had it calculated at 81.28 square.
Including what's on the building today and the parking signs.
Yes.
Okay, so total signage.
Total sign.
That's what we're trying to get at, if that's right,
Correct.
total signage on the property and the
Correct.
total requests, not just what's listed here.
So the parking signs are included in the calculation.
The parking, are you talking about at the parking space?
You're talking about these that were provided to us.
I don't think our ordinance even addresses those.
I don't
So
think
they
they
are
do.
not included in the
Okay.
calculation that I gave you.
Okay.
It's just the pylon sign, the entrance, the exit, and what's currently on the building.
Wall sign. Okay. And when you say the wall sign was approved,
Right.
what, they applied for a permit and got it?
Well, they applied for all these signs, but in order, they had to do business, we wanted to make sure they had some advertisement on the building. So I approved what I could.
Okay,
So we gave them the sign the permit for the wall sign.
gotcha. Okay,
Hey, Andy, what did they add from Benary? What did they add? What Benary had there was the main pylon sign, right?
Heck, existing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what was there to begin with, so to see what they actually added to that.
Was there a wall sign there before? I don't.
They had a wall sign.
There was nothing.
Yeah, but the main pylon, the entrance sign and the exit sign are all existing structures. The request was to reface.
I-
They were originally permitted, I believe, in dating back.
So what did you add?
So
The
far, a
exit-
wall sign,
I'm sorry.
a wall sign,
Okay, so how many square feet did you add from Benary?
12.68,
I'm sorry?
12.68.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even know.
there was an existing wall sign,
I think
correct?
there was originally.
And the 12.6 wall sign you're talking about is what was there previously. You just made it a different sign. Yes, some will nod your head, yes, some look at me like,
In other
I
words,
don't know what the square footage of the Benari
Yeah, that was
sign
down
was.
when we.
That was down
they
when
took it down.
my eye doctor took over the property.
It's located above the entrance, the half circle is. where the
Correct.
sign is.
okay. So when the entrance and exit signs were pre-existing.
Yes.
Okay.
On the pylon.
So while the signage itself may have changed, the dimensions haven't changed since you folks moved in and started business.
Okay.
Any of these signs illuminated?
Yes.
Were the existing prior signs illuminated as well?
Yes.
Yes.
The signs didn't change at all, it's just the face, the plastic didn't. All three of those signs have been there for years. and
Is it back,
illuminated.
is it backlit or
Yes.
is it
Backlit.
LED? Backlit.
Is there any sight line distance issues?
Well,
I
think
saw that in
I
your
think
memo.
the Signs that are at the entrance, my doctor entered, the one that's on the screen now, the M, is like the M1 sign. That is right at the public sidewalk. At the end of the driveway.
Okay.
I would say, I think it's out of the right of way, but I don't.
Do you know if
know what
these
we do.
signs
Mhm.
are in the right of way or not? Location wise, direction.
No.
I don't know.
I would have probably imagined not, they were permitted originally. I can't imagine they would have been approved if they were in the right of way.
Can't
So
say.
But we don't know.
These were permitted through the nineties and the 2000s multiple times. There was a bank. And then Benari at multiple rebrands of permits. I would have assumed if those were in the right of way, they would have been flagged at some point.
Make sure that on the site. You say it.
We're gonna make a motion.
Yeah, I move we grant the variance of sections 172, 123A and 172, 124D to allow the total signage area of 81.2. However, I want to make it, I want to be sure that the entrance sign, the one entrance sign is out of the right of way and also is not a hindrance to the sight lines, the traffic coming down Westchester Pike.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Application passes 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, Z 2025-20, Aronimink Golf Club 3600 St. David's Road, Newtown Square pertaining to subject properties at 567 North Newtown Street Road in Newtown Square, 541 North Newtown Street Road in Newtown Square, and 545 North Newtown Street Road in Newtown Square. Seeking special exception from section 172-29A, subsection 1. C, to allow for temporary use of the subject properties and requesting relief from any other zoning ordinance requests uncovered during the zoning hearing process located in the R1 zoning district. All right.
On my email.
That thumb drive. There you go.
Right there. Serve, so they can, and then right across from the serve.
All right, can the applicants please state your names? Let's get you sworn in. Go on. Hello. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we put some stuff on the record, please?
File in order.
File is in order, properties were posted, there were several properties that we posted individually. We also prepared a notice that was mailed to all property owners within 200 feet of each property boundary. And there's a proof of publication showing that we advertised tonight's hearing on 2 separate occasions.
And Mr. Chairman, for the record, based on the representation of the zoning officer, I ask that the applicant's application, accompanying documents, and exhibit be marked as exhibit township number 1. The list of residents within 200 feet of the subject property be noted as township exhibit number 2. Proofs of publication, the Delaware County Daily Times on 2 consecutive weeks of tonight's meeting be marked as township exhibit number 3. And the picture pertaining to the subject property posting of tonight's hearing be marked as township exhibit number 4.
All right. Is anyone here as a party protestant or want to make public comment for this application? Oh, awesome. Okay. Now let's get them sworn in and get started.
So I'm gonna have 2 witnesses. Do you want to get them sworn in?
Yes.
Now? Okay. Yep, I was gonna get them. My name is Mark D'Amico, D'Amico, and I'm the attorney representing the applicant.
Two. All right, let's walk through it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. May it please the board again. My name is Mark D'Amico. I'm an attorney with an office at 109 Chesley Drive, Media, PA 19063. And here tonight representing Aronimink Golf Club, which is the fee owner of the 3 parcels that are subject of this application. I have handed to your solicitor a copy of the 3 deeds, which were also attached to the application. Property is located in the R1 residential district, and I've handed up a set of exhibits A4 through A9. Again, exhibits A1 through 3 are the deeds, so we started at A4. And I don't know whether Mr. Neese has been able to get that up on the screen, but so I would ask you to turn your attention to exhibit A4, the top page of the packet that I gave to you. So we're seeking a special exception pursuant to 172-29A1C, which permits a nonprofit club when authorized as a special exception in the R1 district. So historically, just to go back, Aronimink is essentially a 300-acre property, and that's essentially what you're seeing in Exhibit A4. The white lines around the edge of the property are the property line. So that property actually pre-exists the zoning ordinance. So the use of a nonprofit club in the R1 district for that 300 acres is permitted. These 2 properties were acquired separately and more recently. If you look at Exhibit A4 at the top left, you'll see some orange rectangles. Compound 2 and Compound 3 are what we're here tonight to talk about this evening, because those properties were more recently acquired. Compound 2, which is 567 North Newtown Street Road, was acquired by the club in 6 years ago. 2019, excuse me. And then Compound 3, that is the property identified as 541 and 545. They're adjacent properties, and those properties were acquired from the Spellman family in 2023. So accordingly, we need to take this first step, seeking a special exception to get them permitted as a nonprofit club. And if we're able to do that, then the next step would be that essentially puts them in the same category with the rest of the property. And again, what you're looking at is Exhibit A4 is the PGA build out for the PGA Championship, which will be held next May 2026. So if you look carefully at that plan, you can see along St. David's Road at the top of the plan, you can see that there's a compound that will allow for the buses to come and drop off the visitors or patrons that are visiting for the PGA Championship. By Gate 5, that area is the merchandise tent. There's tents essentially all over the property. All of that process is a process that the PGA of America is undertaking with the township in terms of permitting. There's been meetings held. There will be more meetings. Ultimately, there will be grading permits to put the gravel down upon which all these tents will be constructed, and building permits. So there'll be fire, electrical permits, all of which will be issued through the township. So that's a whole separate process, not part of the zoning application. But again, and thanks, Mr. Neese. That's up there on the board as Exhibit A5, or on the screens as Exhibit A4. So I think that's really it in terms of an introduction. Again, this board is where we're not asking for variance, a special exception, which is not an exception to the zoning ordinance, but something contemplated and permitted as long as we meet the criteria. So I have 2 witnesses here this evening. John Goslin, who's sitting closer to me. Mr. Goslin works for Aronimink Golf Club, and he's going to explain the second component of it. So there's 2 components of why we're here tonight. The first component is there will be temporary use of those 2 compound areas. And then the after the championship is over, there will be, the proposal here is a special exception for the rear of compound 3 so that Mr. Goslin can use that, area behind the house in association with the golf maintenance, and he'll explain what he proposes to do in detail in a second. All right. John, would you give your full name and your business address for the record here? You're gonna
Hit the
have to
button.
hit the button and then hold that up.
John Goslin, 3600 St. David's Road.
I think you're gonna have to try to hold it a
Okay.
little closer and keep your voice up. It's off again. You might need the.
3600 St. David's Road. There we go.
All right, Mr. Goslin, will you briefly explain your job responsibilities and your title at Aronimink?
I'm the golf course superintendent. My primary responsibility is the management and maintenance of the golf course and all the other grounds, landscaping, and that type of activity.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Goslin, I'm gonna ask, and I'll ask the board, I apologize, I've got this as the last exhibit. So this is the last exhibit in your packet, Exhibit A9. Would you identify, explain what they're looking at as Exhibit A9?
This is the property that we purchased in 2023, and it's what we plan on using for normal golf course activities. We're going to access the property from the golf course through just a gravel cart path, typical cart path, maintenance path, coming in off the 15th hole. And we are, as you can see, bulk storage materials that would just be sands and mulch and things like that. Organic waste would be any, again, limbs, branches, old sod and stuff like that, that we would need to stockpile for removal. And then firewood, we do a lot of firewood splitting for the clubhouse. There's an existing shop there that was there when we bought the property. I believe it was used as a mechanical repair shop for all their equipment. We're not using it for that. We're just going to use it as storage for pieces of equipment that aren't used on a daily basis, that maybe more like a seasonal piece of equipment, like a plow for a plow for a truck or something like that. Just to a little bit about it, this is not going to be any type of primary of our facility. We have our primary facility. This will just be an occasional use. There will be activity there daily, but it will be very minimal. And the hours of operation are generally going to be about 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day.
Okay, Mr. Goslin. So again, just to be clear, on Exhibit A9, there's a building called Shop for Equipment Storage, and then another one called Firewood Splitting and Storage. The firewood splitting and storage is essentially just an open air cover.
Yes, it's just, I think they use it to store some type of material, whether it was soil or whatever, but we've been using it to just stockpile firewood.
Okay, and no employees would be based here. They're based in the golf maintenance facility, which is several hundred yards away.
Yeah, so all our, there's no bathroom facilities. There's a lunchroom over there. We're not going to be reporting to work there. There's no time clock. It's just an auxiliary area for, as you can see, some stored materials and things of that nature.
Okay, and when you say these two structures were there in addition to the house that's shown up top towards 252 when Aronimink Golf Club bought the property from the Spellmans in 2023.
Yeah, so currently we have 3 interns living in the house. We have an internship program.
Well, let me stop you, John. I was just asking you to just give a little context for why those buildings are there. The buildings that you're going to use for normal golf course activities.
They were there when we bought the facility.
Right.
So
But what's your understanding of what Mr. Spellman was? Why are they there?
they ran from what I understand, landscaping, excavation, or similar type business out of there. So they had dozers and excavators and all that type of equipment. And then the shop was used as a mechanical repair shop, as I said, for all of his equipment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now let's move up the page. You've got a line, and above the line, it says no golf course activities, intern house and lawn. So that's the house that the club bought with the property.
Correct. And currently we have a rental license, and that's just to house our interns. We take interns in internationally and nationally, whether it's food and beverage or golf operations, or any other activity at the club. So that's how it's going to be used, or how it's being used currently and ongoing.
Okay, so to be clear, above that white line, that's a registered apartment essentially, and therefore it's not part of this application. That's already being used. It's permitted. It's Aronimink has a license to use that. It's only the normal golf course activity that we're talking about here on the back side of the property. Just wanted to make that clear. All right. All right, and then Mr. Goslin, there's no exhibit for the other property that was purchased in 2019, which is identified as 567 North Newtown Road. So you have, at this point, that's not part of the application, and the Aronimink Golf Club does not have any proposed use for the other property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And have you or others at Aronimink Golf Club attempted to contact the adjacent properties to make them aware of this application?
Yes, 535 North Newtown Road, Mrs. Speck. We did meet with her and her sons, and explained the PGA build out and proposed use for the property going forward.
Okay, let me just stop you there. So looking at Exhibit A9, Mrs. Speck is the property, the house that's just left of the 541, 545 house on that plan.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And that's the only property, Speck home is the only property between this property and the golf course. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Now let's moving the other way to the right. On the other side of Exhibit A9, to the right of the page, there's two properties there. One's owned by Mr. Katona, Anthony Katona. Have you tried to reach him?
Yes, unsuccessful.
Okay. And then the next property is a white house immediately adjacent to that property identified as 563 North Newtown Road. That's owned by Taylor Moyer. Have you met with her?
Yes, I met with her today and reviewed how the lot's going to be used for the championship. And our plans going forward, just maintaining it as a lawn or a field.
Okay. And then 3634 St. David's Road, Carmine Rego, that property is adjacent to 567 North Newtown Street Road, which is only being used for the PGA. Your understanding that the club has been in contact with Mr. Rego?
Yes, the president of the club has been in constant contact with Carmine Rego for probably the last 4 months, and he's well aware of everything we're going to do.
Okay, and then finally, the corner property, which was recently sold by a veterinarian to something called 571 North Newtown LLC. Have you been able to contact the owner of that property?
No, we've been unsuccessful.
Okay, all right. Are you familiar with the standards for special exceptions set forth in the Township Zoning Ordinance at section 172-13?
Yes, and I have reviewed them.
Okay, and do you have an opinion as to whether those standards are met where relevant?
I think all the standards have been met. Again, we're going to continue to use the one property for the normal golf course activities, similar to how it's been used for many years while it was owned by the Spellmans. And all our activity will be a good distance from the road and from other neighbors. The Speck property is the closest, and they have been very supportive Mrs. Spector.
Okay, thank you. So it's your opinion that, allowing this normal golf course activity at the rear of 541, 545 would not have an adverse effect on the health, safety, or general welfare of the residents of Newtown Township?
Yes,
All right, and finally, you understand that the use that you're proposing here is associated with the Aronimink Golf Club, a nonprofit club. And therefore, that use would have to cease if Aronimink ever sold the property. In other words, it does not run with the land.
yes.
All right. All right, Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have for this witness.
Any questions?
The
Mark,
the
this-
intended use is temporary, as I understand the application. Is that accurate?
No, no, Mr. Auslander, just to be clear, the temporary use is for the PGA,
Okay,
Right.
I got you.
and then this will
This is
come
a
along
permit.
afterwards.
Okay.
Yes,
Mark, is this a single deeded property?
it is not,
Both the intern house and the normal golf course activity area?
it is two adjacent properties, 541 and 545.
Okay.
And we bought them on the same day. It was the same owner. Mr. Spellman lived in the house that's 541. And then the property to the right of the page, he purchased at some point and started using it for his business. And so the club bought them together. I shouldn't say we.
Put on exhibit 9, that dividing line between what you're seeking relief for and not seeking relief for. That's not.
Yeah, so the line that is horizontal, separating non-club activities from normal golf course activities, all that property in the rear, where you're seeing the shop for equipment and firewood, that encompasses 541 and 545, but not 567, which is several hundred feet over.
So your special exception request is for both the lot and the house?
No.
540,
No,
541 and 545.
yeah, but it's the rear of the property.
It is specific to the equipment portion of it.
Yes, specific to the equipment portion, right? Everything above the line is just the house, and we have Aronimink has a
You're-
rental
you're
license.
compliant.
Only 3 people are allowed there. We did have a discussion with the township about trying to maybe up that number, and that would have required additional relief, and we decided to leave it alone.
May I just ask while you're looking, so just the log split, I mean, everything else you talked about was just kind of moving some sod and storing some equipment and stuff like that. Log splitting, obviously, I'm assuming it's not a guy with an axe, it's probably a machine, which is loud. Can you just agree to some sort of a condition that it won't happen at certain times when it would bother neighbors, like on a Sunday morning or, church time or something like that?
Sure, and we're not splitting wood every day. It's just occasionally to keep a couple fireplaces in the clubhouse stock. So it's not an everyday occurrence. It's
Days between 7 and 3.
exactly.
Next witness?
Yeah. Okay, Tyler, would you give your full name and business address for the record, please?
Tyler Curtis, 3600 St. David's Road.
Okay, and by whom are you employed?
PGA of America, I'm the championship operations manager for it. Championship.
All right, Mr. Curtis, I'm going to ask you to turn to what's been marked as Exhibit A5. Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
Do not, no.
Get a copy of that in front of you. Okay. Tell us what Exhibit A5, it's labeled Compound 2. So which compound are we talking about here?
So this is our vendor compound 2. This will house our vendors that help put on the championship.
Okay,
From
wait, let me just stop you there, just to orient the board, make sure we're all on the same page. This is the
property that's closest to the circle, 567 North Newtown Road?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, proceed.
Yeah, so this property will manage or hold our, vendors that help put on the championship. This will be their offices for 6 to 8 months, let's say, as we're doing the build. We'll start, the process for this property by laying some gravel down. Not disturbing any of the earth, just laying fabric and putting gravel with the grade that's already there. It will sit empty until about February. And then we'll start having our vendors arrive come early February. We'll have our tent and flooring company Arena, we'll have our electrical company Agreco, our signage company Fifth Color, our operations assistants, and a couple other vendors will work out of that property for about 6 to 8 months. Come February timeline, we'll put up a fence surrounding the property so the neighbors won't see in it. It will kind of keep a separation so they're not seeing the day-to-day activity as things are going on. And then people will start doing their job for the championship. You'll see the tents out here. To erect the tents, we'll go through the permitting process with Andy for our temporary tents. And then they'll be working for 6 to 8 months from February to pretty much end of July, I would say.
Okay, and when you say work after the championship, there's a period of break? Are they still working after the?
Yeah, so the construction phase will be from February to May 10th. Championship will be May 11th through the 17th. And then May 18th, we'll start tearing it all down. And then once the last vendor is clear, we'll pick up the gravel and hand it over to Mr. Goslin so he can do his thing to put it back to how it was.
Okay. Now, I would ask you to identify Exhibit A6 in the lower right-hand corner. It's labeled Compound 3 Catering.
Yep. So this will be our catering company's production kitchen compound. This property will kind of go through the same process. September and October, we'll lay gravel down, laying the fabric, going with the grade of the land already, putting the gravel down. It will sit unoccupied until about February. When the build timeline calls for the production kitchen to be built, Arena will build it. It'll sit empty until about 4 weeks prior to the championship when Patina, our catering company, will move in. And they'll work out of it up until the championship, and then post-championship takes about 2 to 3 weeks to clean up. Once all their equipment's out of there, Arena will tear down the structure. Once the structure's off property, we'll pick up the gravel and then hand it back over to John.
Okay. And again, there would be a fence all along each.
Correct.
property.
Again, yes, the fence will go around the property so the neighbors won't be able to see in, kind of keep the separation and everything.
Okay. So one of the special exception standards is 172.13A4, which references stormwater drainage. Can you comment on whether the stormwater drainage has been accounted for?
Yes, we have issued these gravel plans to Eric Johnson, the township engineer. He's reviewed them, as you can see in A7. You'll see the lay of the land and slope from Newtown Town Street down to Aronimink property. We're not changing anything. It's still going to do that same thing. You can see the arrows kind of pointing where the water flows. Closest corner to Carmine's property will build a little bit higher up, so nothing disturbs into his property. Everything will still run to Aronimik's property.
Okay, and that's Exhibit A7. And when you say Carmine's property, you're talking about the property in the upper middle page that I think you can see his swimming pool there at the top.
That's correct.
Okay, and that little box talks about increasing the gravel depth there to keep the water, any stormwater from flowing onto his property and just back onto Aronimik's property,
Correct.
right? Okay, and then Exhibit A8, is that a similar grade?
Yeah, similar thing. We'll lay the fabric down going with the plans of the property. Everything runs from Newtown Town Street down to the Aronimik's property, so we're just continuing that. We'll lay the fabric, gravel on top, and not disturbing any earthwork, just going with the grade already.
Okay, and have you showed those gravel grading plans to the township engineer?
Yes, sent in an email to Eric, got his approval for the plan, and he seems good with it.
Okay, when you say Eric, you're talking about Eric Johnson of.
Correct,
Pinota
Eric Johnson.
Associates?
Yep.
Okay, all right. And based on everything you've just testified to with your experience of PGA of America operating and being involved in prior PGA championships, do you have an opinion as to whether this temporary use of these two properties would have any adverse effect on the health, safety, or general welfare of the residents of Newtown Township?
I think everything will be good.
All right. Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions I have for this witness.
All right, so everything's gonna be returned exactly how it was, essentially.
Essentially, yes, yeah. So if there's grass there now, once all the gravel's done, John will take it over and do what he does, bring it back to what it was.
How high is the fence?
That would be an 8-foot fence. So that blue line you see on A5, A6, that would be an 8-foot chain link fence. We'll put a windscreen around it.
Um, they're showing an entranceway into this compound two area in exhibit A5 off of where 252 branches off to hit the circle. Is that currently there? Or?
Yeah, those two entrances are currently there.
Okay. And how much traffic increase should you see for the use of compound two?
You'll see an increased flow of traffic just from a delivery standpoint for the equipment that needs to put on the championship. Most of the equipment will veer towards St. David's Road entrance where our bus terminal is. But this vendor compound too will see some increased flow, but minimal compared to the bus depot.
Is that trucks or cars or?
Trucks, semi-trucks carrying the equipment. You can see kind of the cars that will be parked in the lot. Those will be kind of the ones that come and go morning and night. But during the day or during the weekdays, you'll see truck deliveries.
And this is for, if I understand correctly, the construction period from February to May
Correct,
10th?
the construction phase. So February to May 10th, and then you'll see it on the back end, kind of towards June, July, you'll see an increase of semi-traffic flow as well.
Okay. And I think in the application, it said, actually it was an actual date, July 10th, that it would be completed. Is that a hard
It's like,
date?
it's a rough tentative date,
Okay.
yeah, weather dependent on everything.
Okay. That's all I have.
Andy, any concerns or?
I don't.
Maybe you have a motion. Sam, should we handle these separately?
Excuse me?
Should we handle the motion separately for these two requests?
Well, you don't have to do them separately. The application is one application. I would address both issues
Mhm.
in your motion, in particular to the subject property.
Is it the same special exception for both? For both
I
properties?
think that's what the application.
Yes,
for.
it is. Yes, and just one is of the same section of the ordinance, just one is of a temporary nature that pertains to both properties, and then the permanent nature of the rear of 541 and 545.
I think you can address it by the property address for the temporary versus the property address for the more permanent.
Can I just
Remind
ask-
us.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can I just ask, I just thought of this. When the construction work is ongoing, what are the anticipated hours that work is going to be being done?
For the construction phase, it'd be Monday through Saturday, probably 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., I would say.
There's only one problem, I guess, with that is during the school hours in September. Oh, it won't be there, right? You're out,
We're
you're
not
done in
there
May?
September.
February, March.
Yeah, but you're in February and March. Those times, 252 is really backed up because the school's going into Episcopal. And you're gonna be at that circle, which is the way they come. So you might wanna have to alter your kind of work hours on school days. Because it's a real they really back up. You're trying to
I guess
get.
what are
parts.
those hours that it gets backed up?
Okay,
That's
I'm
the-
sorry.
I said, what would be the hours that it gets backed up there? That's just something I would need to know.
Yeah, I think they start about 7 to 7:30 in the mornings is when they start backing up there. And it's good, it's just the kids going to school and the parents are dropping them off in the school buses and you're coming down exactly where they split at Newtown Road and St. David's, and then they go around the circle and then they go into the school. So I think that maybe during the week or when they're school, they kind of, and you'll see that, you can
Yeah.
kind of check before you start. Yep. And it's the same time every day. It's just,
You remind us what address this is?
The
Which
temporary
address?
is 567. right?
That's 541-545.
That's the permanent one.
Yes,
545 is the permanent.
the
541
the
and
rear of the
545.
property is going to be permanent.
That A9 that you're looking at is two properties. They're just contiguous and owned by Spellman for 20 years together, so it looks like one property.
I'm done, I'll make I'd like to make a motion to approve on application 2025-20 for Romanic Golf Club. That their application with regard to seeking special exception from 172-29A1C to allow for temporary use of the premises known as 567 North Newtown Street Road. Be granted the relief sought of the special exception, and further that the other property at 541-545 North Newtown Road, special exception also be granted on a permanent basis.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, sir.
With limitations.
The timing limitations, the fence, yes.
As testified.
Limitation for the splitting, the wood splitting, between the hours of, I think,
And I think the mornings, the school mornings too, I think that's kind of really important.
Okay.
It's really backed up over there in the mornings, the school days.
Yeah, but that's just a traffic issue going in and out of the place, right? It's not the work being done. Doesn't affect the work being done.
It would be the traffic, I would say, but I can control only so much when truck
Right.
drivers arrive. I can give them the notice of, hey, try to arrive after 8 o'clock. But as we all know, truck driver's gonna do what a truck driver's gonna do.
Yep.
do we have conditions or I get clarity on the conditions, or are we okay with traffic not being a condition?
My understanding is that the firewood would only be operated during weekdays, if, to whatever extent, on weekdays between the hours of 7 and 3. Was that correct, Mr. Goslin? Okay. And that there'll be installed an 8-foot fence with windscreen around the compound too,
Both compounds.
both compounds. Okay? And you'll do your best to accommodate the situation with the students.
I'll do my best with that.
Okay?
Second to that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion granted. Thank you.
Very much for your time.
All right. Thanks for bearing with us. Last application, application Z 2025-21, CCS Group LLC, Vu Nguyen, 1265 Cedar Grove Road, Media, PA, pertaining to subject property 116 Chestnut Street, Newtown Square, seeking variance relief from sections 172-134B3 and sections 172-34B6 to build a residential single-family home on a non-conforming lot. Also requests relief from any other sections of the zoning ordinance realized during the zoning hearing process. And it is located in the R3 zoning district. Andy, is this file in order?
Yes, following order, the property was posted, as you can see on the overhead. We also prepared a notice that we mailed to all property owners within 200 feet of the property boundary. That list is also on the screen. We also have a proof of publication, advertising, tonight's hearing on 2 separate occasions.
All right, Sam. We have a number.
Chairman, based on the recommendations of the zoning officer, I ask that the applicant's application and accompanying documents and evidence be marked as the Township Exhibit number 1. A list of residents within 200 feet of the subject property who have provided notice of tonight's hearing be marked as Township Exhibit number 2. Proofs of publication in Delaware County Daily Times in 2 consecutive weeks be marked as Township Exhibit number 3. The posting of the property of tonight's hearing as well be marked as Township Exhibit number 4.
Okay. They are entered. We swear in our applicants, please. State your name and then everyone that will be testifying will get you sworn in.
Sure, my name is Vu Nguyen of CCS Group LLC.
Dave Gibbons. Dave Gibbons, Gibbons, with Howell Engineering.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Jennings. I am legal counsel for the applicant. One of these times, I'm hopeful to not be last on the agenda here. But we are here tonight for 116 Chestnut Street. I'm joined by my 2 witnesses who have just been sworn. I do anticipate that.
Have they? They have not been sworn yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please, yeah.
It's just the 2?
Yes, just the 2.
Okay, let's swear them in. And then anyone here to be a party protestant or to make public comment, please come and have a seat. State your name, address, and we'll get you sworn in as well.
Yes, James Reif, R-E-I-F, 122 Chestnut Street, Midtown Square.
Maria McMurdy. Maria McMurdy, M-C-M-E-A-R-T-Y, 119 Main Street.
Okay, and you were listed as party protestants, correct? You received a notice and you are within range of the property.
Yes.
Okay.
I never received a notice. My address is not on that list. Not a big thing. My neighbor sent me a copy, so it must have been just a.
Are you a direct neighbor to the property or? Okay. All right.
Ms. Reef,
And-
we have your letter. Are you going to offer it into evidence? Or you want me to put it into evidence on your behalf?
Yes, please.
Mr. Reef has sent a letter to the township noting his protest and explanation. I'm sure he's here going to clarify, but we can make this brief exhibit number 1 made part of the record.
Please, thank you. And anyone else for public comment? Perhaps at the end? Okay, we'll reserve that for the end. Please respect the process during, let them present their case, and then we can leave time for asking questions and any cross-examination is necessary. Okay, great. Let's get into it.
Thank you. So the application pertains to property located at 116 Chestnut Street. Just by way of brief background, I know it's late. This property is an undeveloped vacant lot. And my client proposes to construct a very reasonable and modestly sized single-family detached dwelling. In order to do so, we merely seek 2 dimensional-based variances. Unlike the first hearing tonight, we're not here seeking 6 variances, 2 special exceptions for an oversized dwelling. This application is much different. The single-family detached dwelling is actually permitted by right in the R3 zoning district where the property is located. The 2 dimensional variances entail building area and side yard setbacks, and we'll get into each of those specific requests. It is worth noting at the outset, and I think that we can see from the depiction throughout the room, that the property is a pre-existing legal nonconformity. We did not create the legal nonconformities, which our engineer will detail. The lot is undersized and it's very narrow. Very importantly, to put this into perspective, the lot as it exists is actually less than half the size that the code requires it to be. We did not create or subdivide this lot. And also importantly, as your solicitor will advise you from a legal perspective, the applicant is entitled to make reasonable use of this property, so long as the proposed development is deemed reasonable by the board. And as we present our case this evening, I think the board will quickly come to realize just how reasonable of an application and an ask this is. So with that said, I'd like to call my first witness, Vu Wen. Vu,
V is in Victor, U is umbrella, last name is N is in Nancy, G is in guide, U is umbrella, Y is in yellow, E is in elephant, N is in Nancy.
and Vu, technically CCS Group LLC is the owner of the subject property, correct?
That is correct.
And that's demonstrated by the property's deed, which we've marked as Exhibit A1, right?
That is correct.
And are you a principal and authorized representative of that entity?
That is correct.
And you, on behalf of that entity, I assume, were responsible for the submission of this zoning application, which brings us here this evening.
That is correct.
And is that application, the document we've marked as Exhibit A2?
That is correct.
Would you say that my introduction accurately captured the essence of your ask here this evening?
That is correct.
Using the documents behind tab 3, could you generally describe for the board where this property is located?
This property is located at 116 Chestnut. It has 3 lots of 40 by 125. The 2 lots to the second one, the middle one and the right one has an existing house on there. And then to the left, the first one is a empty lot.
Okay, and it's the empty lot that we're here for.
That is correct.
And the uses that are immediately adjacent to this subject property are what?
Residential.
All residential?
That is correct.
On all sides, including across the street?
Yes.
Okay. And did I accurately state that we're located in the R3, which is a residential zoning district?
Yes.
Why don't you tell the board exactly what you're proposing for this lot?
Yeah, as you can see here, I'm proposing a house that's a single family house that's reflective of the neighborhood, a modest house that Ryan said earlier, that's reasonable within the construction here. It's going to be using 22.5 by 55 feet. It's about 1,237-ish square feet. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere written down. I think they will have the exact dimensions, but it's around that vicinity. And I'm looking to build a house right there, which is next to my current property to the right side.
And the Dave that you made reference to, that's Dave Gibbons, the project engineer from Howell, correct?
That is correct.
And did you commission Dave and his team to perform a site survey and to develop a site plan depicting your proposed dwelling?
Yes.
Is that site plan the document we've marked as Exhibit A4?
Yes,
And that in fact is the document that's depicted on the screens.
that is correct.
Is the lot, as far as you understand it, undersized?
Yes,
Okay, and it's just 5,000 square feet in area or 0.115 acres. Do I have that correct?
that is correct.
Would you describe the lot as very narrow?
Yes,
And to be clear, neither you nor your entity, CCS Group, had anything to do with the creation of this lot,
that is correct.
nor the dimensional-based hardships that we're here describing, correct?
That is correct.
Is it your opinion that what you're proposing will harmoniously match in both size and character with the surrounding parcels?
That is correct.
And is that your number one objective here?
Yes, we want to make sure that we blend in with the neighborhood harmoniously through it, and it's very reasonable. I used to live there, so, in Walnut Street, and so I really want to make sure that it's a good area that is harmonious.
And aside from the two-dimensional requests, do you otherwise intend to comply with each and every of the township's other area and bulk requirements as well as the design standards?
Yes,
Okay, so at present time, you don't anticipate that any additional zoning relief will ever be required for what you're proposing?
that is correct.
Do you think that your application is in any way prejudicial to the character of the immediate vicinity?
No,
Do you think that it'll have any detrimental impact or effect on neighboring properties?
no,
What about on the township?
no,
Do you think that what the size of the dwelling that you're proposing, do you suspect that it is of suitable size and character for the particular lot in question?
yes,
Will it in any way affect adversely the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare?
No,
What about a negative impact on the R3 zoning district?
no,
Is the proposed dwelling consistent with the community development objectives as set forth in the township's code?
yes,
Any effect on the essential character of the R3 zoning district?
no,
Before today, were you aware of any opposition to your application?
on to today.
And did you proactively seek to introduce yourself to the property's neighbors? And did you make outreach to introduce the application and to address proactively any concerns or questions?
Yeah, when we decided to do June today for the zone meeting, because I can't have a conflict next month. I did send a personalized letter to the adjacent house, which was Mr. Reef right here. And across the street, I did also reach out to Mr. O'Brien, Mrs. and Mr. O'Brien at 117, and Mr. and Mrs. French at 115. French, the language.
Did any of those three targeted outreach initiatives yield any conversation or response?
I did not hear back from any.
Okay. What was your intent behind reaching out?
I really wanted to make sure that we have a project that was, respectable, reasonable, and modest to the whole entire community. I want to get us together and have a conversation to see what we can do, but I have not heard back.
Early on in the design process, was it always your intention to propose a single-family detached dwelling of this minimalist size?
We went through a number of iterations, truth be told. We thought about actually knocking down the other house and then doing something a little bit bigger. But in due respect to the neighborhood, we decided to keep that there and then do a smaller house. We actually want to do this house a little bit bigger as well. But talking to my consultants and such, that we scaled it down pretty significantly, especially with the width of being 22.5. And so we were saying, okay, what can we do from a neighborhood perspective? And it essentially matches what's across the street at 107 Chestnut, and that's what we did.
And you made reference to 107 Chestnut, and that's important because we came to learn of a prior zoning hearing board approval from the 2016 timeframe, correct?
Correct.
And that application and that approval from just less than a decade ago is actually close to a mirror image of what you're proposing right across the street.
That is correct.
That was largely, is it fair to suggest, the basis for our design and our application here this evening?
That is correct.
So using that prior precedent, we wanted to try to match so as to minimize the type of relief that we're requesting.
That is correct.
That 2016 application entailed Ryan Andrew Holmes, and that application number was Z2016-04. Did you make efforts to obtain various documentation in advance of tonight from the township?
Yes,
And you were successful in that endeavor to a large extent, correct?
correct.
And we came to learn that that approval was granted in 2016, and there was a condition imposed regarding the side yards. Does that ring a bell?
Yes,
Okay. And that was that the side yards, given the narrow nature of the lot, could only contain basement emergency egress as well as mechanical equipment. Are you familiar with that condition?
yes,
And would you be agreeable to a similar or an identical condition that was imposed on that very similar application and approval?
yes.
And we'll discuss that more with our next witness, but before we get to him, is there anything else at this time that you wish to present to the board?
I just appreciate the time as the first person that came here. This is my first time going to a zone board meeting, so, and I know it's late, and the Phillies, I think, are winning, so hopefully we'll get to see them again.
Already over.
That's already over?
All right, that's all I have for this first witness. Thank you. Hold tight, I might have questions.
Quick question. The three lots. You did not subdivide the three?
No, when we bought it, it came as 3 separate lots.
Correct. And you said you considered using all three or knocking down the home looking at the house to the right. Is that the home you're
Yeah,
referencing?
that was part of the idea, but then after talking to, like my consultants and others, I'm like, that's not the right plan for this place.
You purchased all three,
It
including
was
the
actually
existing
just
home?
one house and it came with three separate lots.
Okay, and you're, I don't know if subdividing is the right word, but
You reverse subdivision? Is that what he did there, Andy? He combined the two lots?
No,
The house sits on two separate ones, the next door, I guess, the one to the east, southeast?
All three are on it.
There's a house there and there's a dividing line in the middle of the house.
right, that's two of the three.
Yeah, that's, you must have.
You purchased all three together.
Reverse subdivision that built his house on it. Yeah,
Correct.
it's like a reverse subdivision. Right.
I mean, it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's,
Okay. Are you familiar with how this property was used,
It's not.
prior to your purchasing?
I do not.
I get the two has a house straddling it, so that makes sense. In an area, I noticed a trampoline in the corner of it. Do you know if that home leverages property as part of the existing yard or used that property for anything?
I'm actually
Collectively?
not sure.
Those are good questions, but I think the important thing to note is this is a standalone lot that the township at some point in time permitted to exist in this undersized fashion, and that my client was in no way responsible for the establishment of that lot.
And what do you do when the time comes you want to sell it? You're all three parcels are on one deed. You're building this separate house. You already have one house. Now you have a second house. You want to sell it to a third party, you have to subdivide. Is that your intent?
No. My intent is to keep that house in whole because my mom's actually getting older too. And so eventually we'd like to potentially move my mom there as well, because it's a better neighborhood she can walk around versus where she lives now, off of Cedar Grove Road.
Eventually, some point in time.
I mean, she's 70, so I'm trying to, my dad passed away 2 years ago, and so we're starting to nudge her in that direction.
Because the lots aren't held in single and separate ownership, that non-conforming lot would be joined with the underlying lots.
No, only if the doctrine of like natural merger were to occur. As the law recognizes this lot today, it's a standalone. Just because it is made part of one singular deed does not prevent us from creating a separate deed to keep those lots separate of one another.
But I think our code, and I'm gonna look for the section, looks at that lot, because it's not, there's three lots at play. Two of the lots are being utilized, leaving this one lot as a nonconformity, not held in single and separate ownership. It would be considered joined to the the other lots. And actually prevent this, you would have to ask for a variance for that and subdivide that eventually to. You'd have to ask for a variance from that section of the code in order to create this, to use this lot independently of the other two.
That assumes that a provision of your code is not superseded by the natural state law of lot merger.
I'm not the attorney here, so.
Understood. Understood.
You own the other home?
Yes,
You own it,
the one on the right, yes.
and you live there?
I do not.
I guess the only question, in terms of where the proposed dwelling is located in the lot, I'm thinking of neighbors on each side, obviously one you know. Not sure who's on the other side, in terms of where the house sits, so that it's directly next to the house, or can it be shifted at all so you're not looking right at each other's houses? I don't know how they match up together. Can you give me some indication of that?
Sure, and we'll have our engineer testify to that in greater detail, but I'm happy to just briefly preview that. You'll see that the side yard dimension closest to the house that the applicant owns is a 7.5-foot dimension. We purposefully allowed for a 10-foot dimension to the other neighbor, figuring that it would make the most sense to attempt to center the building envelope, but shift it more toward the property that is held in common ownership, out of respect for the neighbor. If the board is inclined to require further shifting, that's
I
certainly
was
something.
thinking more of front and back than side to side. So they're not directly side by
I see,
side.
so they're offset, they're articulated in a
Correct.
sense. Understood. Yeah, and
But I
we'll
don't know
have,
if there's a side or rear yard setback issue created for your.
there is a front yard setback issue. It's a 45-foot dimension, and you'll see that we meet that squarely. We have set that back exactly 45 feet. So if we were to move it to offset it better or more toward the road, we would require front yard setback variance. So we, as Vu testified, we looked at this dozens and dozens of different ways to try to figure out how we can truly come before this board and present an application that authentically asks for the least amount of relief.
So the way I understand it is when you have two or more lots, such as you have in one deed, then at some point in time, the individuality of those lots cease to exist, and there's a merger. So why isn't that applicable to your fact scenario?
Well, I think that the merger doctrine, and I don't have the criteria memorized, but I think that it goes to owner intent, and I think that there's a passage of time requirement, and I don't know that either are satisfied in this particular instance.
I'm not sure it goes to intent necessarily, as opposed to whether or not your intent is exhibited by some action. Is there a pool that runs on both lots? Is there a structure, okay, that would show your intent in that mechanism? Here, you don't have a fence that runs around it. So it's hard to determine how these lots haven't merged. So that's what I'm grappling with.
I understand.
And is there a negative effect where are we creating a nonconformity in some way, shape, or form on the other two remaining lots?
No, I don't believe so. We can try to look at that from an engineering perspective here shortly. But I mean, valid questions, but I think that they are standalone lots, and until there's a court decree finding that these lots are merged by operation of law, they are divided by an actual property boundary. And I don't think that they can be assumed.
You've created division where you want the division to be.
We didn't create the division, no. We purchased the property where the division had already existed, and I think that that's a distinguishing characteristic
So
with
you
zero
think
intent to
your
merge.
Deed, the structure and description of your deed grants you the individuality of each lot? Is that your theory?
Yes, it is. With zero intent to merge. I think as we sit here this evening, they are standalone lots that have not merged by operation of law. And until there's a court order, to my prior point, they need to be separately distinguished.
I think it also goes back to the history of the properties and how were they ever held in single and separate ownership? Were they purchased recently as 3 lots from the original owner? So I think it goes back I think it has to go back, and you have to show that history as to how those lots, once created, how they were owned. Were they always owned by one individual?
I understand what
And
you're
ultimately, how were they used by that individual?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think, you said that we have to go back and show that. I don't think that that's actually the case. I think that until, again, somebody suggests that there is an actual merger of these lots, an involuntary merger, they are to be treated separately. They're separate tax parcels. The county recognizes them separately. All of the mapping recognizes them separately. So there's been no actual finding by any authority that these lots are merged by operation of by operation of law or ordinance or otherwise. Vu, when did you purchase these properties?
This property was purchased in May 2017.
Were there any representations made to you at the time of purchase that these lots have in any way merged into one?
No.
Did you ask any questions as to the individuality of the lots or their existence?
No.
Do you have any information historically, to the zoning officer's point, to enlighten all of us here in real time as to, you know, whether there was any intent prior or present to merge?
No.
How many tax bills do you get?
It's three.
You get 3 separate tax bills?
Yeah, because it's 3 different lots.
Because no one has
But one
deemed them
tax-
merged.
If he gets 3 tax bills, he gets 3 tax parcels.
They are 3 separate tax parcels with 3 separate tax bills.
He
There,
gets 3,
No
if he gets
government-
3 tax bills, there are 3 tax parcels.
There's only one tax parcel noted on the deed.
Well, look, that could have been an error, but I mean, if he's getting 3 tax
Well,
parcels,
it may be convenienced by the county
Yes,
as well.
yeah.
We're looking at the deed itself.
Okay, let's move on to the next witness. We can come back and ask questions.
Sure. All right, Dave, could you please identify yourself again for the record?
Sure, Dave Gibbons,
By whom are you employed?
Howell Engineering.
And what is your position there?
I'm a principal engineer,
How long have you been with the company?
21 years.
And for approximately how long have you been a licensed engineer in the Commonwealth?
I believe about 17.
Could you briefly describe for the board your educational background?
Sure, I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Pennsylvania State University.
What about your professional experience? Any other places of employ before Howell?
No, I've been with Hal for 21 years and I've been practicing civil engineering with a focus on subdivision and land development for the past 21 years in southeastern PA.
Have you previously provided sworn testimony before township boards of supervisors and zoning hearing boards,
I have,
including within Delaware County?
I have.
At this time, barring any additional questions as to Mr. Gibbons' qualifications, I'm going to offer him as an expert in the field of engineering and design.
No objections.
Very good, thank you. Dave, are you familiar with this application
I am,
as well as the site plan that we've previously introduced as A4?
yes,
And did you and your firm prepare A4?
we did, yes.
Okay, using that site plan, could you please detail precisely what the plan depicts?
Sure, so Exhibit A4 is a plan that my office prepared. It depicts existing survey of 3 separate parcels. The one parcel that we are here for tonight is boxed in red. And what you see on there is what is being proposed on that lot. And it's a single-family dwelling of approximately the size of 22.5 feet wide by 55 feet deep. We do show a driveway and a single-car garage for this home. Exhibit A4 also provides for some general notes and the area in bulk for this property.
Let's talk about, we mentioned 2 dimensional variances. Let's talk about number 1.
Sure, so that first variance is from section 172-34B3. And it's in regard to the building area coverage. And what is allowed on this property is 20%, and we are proposing 24.76.
So a deviation of 4.76%.
That's correct.
And again, that deals with building area on the lot itself.
That's just the building area, not the total lot impervious coverage, correct?
And what about variance 2?
The second variance is from section 172-34B6, and it's with regards to the side yard setbacks. The ordinance requires that the aggregate width of the two side yard setbacks shall be no less than 35 feet, and neither of which shall be less than 15 feet in width. Based on the narrow nature of this existing lot, we are proposing to have the side yard on the western side be roughly 10 feet, and on the eastern side, 7.5 feet.
And what physical circumstances and/or conditions of this property are you able to identify that have created hardship for the property's ultimate development and use?
Essentially, it's the size and dimension of this lot. The lots in this zoning district need to be 12,000 square feet. This is 5,000, so it's less than half of what is required by the zoning ordinance. So that in fact is a hardship to be able to construct a single family home on that size lot in this district. And then also, as I said, the dimension of this is, it's a very narrow lot. It's only 40 feet wide. The two side yard setbacks that are required by the ordinance would leave us a very narrow sliver of land, about 5 feet wide, to build a house, which is not doable.
It's impossible, in fact, correct?
Correct.
And again, we're in the R3 zoning district, which is a residential district.
That's correct.
And in R3, it basically permits uses that are allowed in R2, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in R2, it points to the R1 zoning district, is that right?
It does.
And in R1, single-family detached dwellings are permitted by right, correct?
I agree, yes.
Do you have any reason to believe that if the variances are authorized, that the essential character of the neighborhood would be affected?
I do not.
Will the proposed use, a residence, substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property?
No, it will not.
Will it be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare?
No.
Did you and your team undertake various iterations of the plan to ultimately land on what we've proposed here tonight?
We did, yes.
In your expert engineering opinion, would you say that this plan represents the minimum variance that would afford relief and represents the least modification of the regulations at issue?
I do.
On that note, I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but is it safe for me to assume that this might just be the most narrow single-family home that you've ever designed or designated a building envelope or footprint for?
For me personally, yes. I mean, this is a very, very narrow single-family home, not typical to see, and I, in 21 years, haven't had any houses single-family houses this narrow.
And is it your expert engineering opinion that in order to allow for the reasonable use of this property, that this small or modestly sized home is wholly appropriate for this particular lot?
Yes, I agree.
As you understand it, will the home strive to blend with its residential environment?
That's my understanding, yes.
Will it closely match the shape, style, and design of similar sized homes across the street?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And we previewed this earlier, but let's turn to A6. Are you familiar with that voluminous documentation marked A6?
I am.
Okay. And is this the across the street approval from 2016 that we previously made reference to?
It is.
And that's the property at 107 Chestnut Street?
Correct.
Okay. And I realize that these plans belong to a different consulting engineering firm, but could you briefly walk the board through what these plans and the documentation depict?
Sure. I mean, it's a very, very similar plan to Exhibit A4, which is our plan. Actually, we utilize this plan to model a very similar concept, if not identical. This lot is, it appears to be the exact same shape and size, 40 feet wide by 125 feet deep. They are proposing the exact same side yard dimensions, 10 feet on one side, 7.5 on another. They're meeting their rear and front yard setbacks, as are we. And we have a very similar shaped driveway for 2 cars and a single car garage as well. So, I mean, if you put the two plans next to each other, they're nearly identical.
And the other documentation, there are various floor plans, there are various colorized architectural renderings. Are these documents that you've also familiarized yourself with?
I have.
And, we're not necessarily subjecting ourselves to a particular color scheme or floor plan, but would you imagine that given this building envelope, we would be forced to essentially build something very, very similar, if not identical?
Yes, I would agree.
In your expert engineering opinion, is this property suitable for the size home that we've proposed for this lot?
Yes, it is.
And lastly, have each of your answers to my questions this evening been rendered to a reasonable degree of engineering and design certainty?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Are these plans, you're saying not the plans?
Correct. We have not yet developed plans. It's a little early in the process for doing so, but we did, through right to know request, obtain these plans that were previously submitted through the land development process for the approval across the street. So we figured the more pictures and depictions we could provide, the board would be better suited to understand the nature of our nearly identical application. So it's more of a reference than it is our plans. It's somebody else's work, and I want to make the record clear on that.
But Exhibit A4 is? the
Is
plan.
our plan. Hal designed that site plan. That's our lot. That's our building footprint with our dimensions.
So the footprint is the only thing solidified at this point.
Correct.
Height, dimensions, type of structure is just notional based on.
Well, height, we're happy to, one, will comply with the ordinance. Two, we would imagine that the height would be similar, if not identical, to that depicted in A6. And I think that we can give you a number if that's helpful to the board. 4 feet high. I'm told that the height would be approximately 24 feet high.
Okay. Yeah, I'm most interested in your plan versus 2016 ruling from a different board in a different circumstance.
Understood.
But okay.
Similar lot size, similar building envelope, so I think it's a necessary comparison and some precedent has been established, but I understand the differentiating characteristics.
I have a question, Mr. Hal. You did utilize Exhibit 6 in your testimony. Would you agree with me that the parcel for the known as 107 Chestnut Street, that they're bounded by two separate owners? Parcel to the right was owned by Ronald and Stephanie Carroll and Megan M. Breslin on the left, correct?
On this plan, I would agree.
So this was a standalone lot, dissimilar from the proposal this evening.
I agree that this is a standalone lot.
Thank you.
Was there an evaluation done, since all three lots are in common ownership? Was there an evaluation done as to shifting that internal lot line in a way that would make both lots more conforming?
To be honest with you, there was not. I mean, we didn't look at the subdivision process because we knew we had this one lot, separate lot. And so we wanted to kind of minimize the amount of, I guess, relief that we would need. So this is why we went with this proposal.
Now, gentlemen, we have 45 days to render.
Understood. Okay. Party protestants, any questions for either witness?
No, for myself, what do you plan on doing with the house once it's built?
I'm gonna since my mom's not gonna be immediately moving, I plan to hold and then rent it out. And so I would keep it for a long time, so I wanna make sure that it's something that's reasonable within the neighborhood.
Okay, good. When you dropped your letter off in my mailbox, which I appreciate late last week, did you knock on the door to see if I was home? Maybe talk to me? 'Cause I pretty much am there all the time.
In this day and age, I'm very wary about people knocking on the door without a badge or something, and then I think it's like somebody.
Gotcha. No, I got you.
Understood.
That's my, I don't have a question.
Or you are looking at the proposed home to the left, looking at it from Chestnut to the left. Your house, yes,
House is to the left.
correct, okay.
Okay, I am directly behind the lot.
Okay. Mhm. Well, any building would need to conform with the water management regulations of the township, but other than the footprint of the building, has anything else been planned or decided, whether fencing, buffering of landscaping, mitigation of these types of concerns, or are you not there yet?
Well, if you look at Exhibit A4, which is our site plan, we do mimic the proposed 6-foot vinyl privacy fence on that western side, which was also part of the plan for the other narrow lot across the street. So we'd be willing to put something like that up.
And the applicant would have no concerns or hesitancy to plant whatever buffer screening the board or the neighbors would request. Again, his testimony was he wants to be a good neighbor. He wants to be harmonious with what's existing. And we'll put up whatever fences, we'll plant whatever trees the board deems necessary or the zoning officer.
Even though he didn't knock, you would welcome a conversation about that? Okay.
And that's on me. I told him, we had a
No,
conversation.
I
and
understand.
This day and age, people don't want to answer their
You don't want
doors.
to get into it at that moment necessarily, but from this point, you would welcome both a conversation about different considerations that would make this an easier decision. Yes. Okay. Cool.
House across the street. Reference. Also said that is what you build something very similar in that, and that's approximately.
So I think that height is actually 27 based on what I added quickly.
Typically, when people come in for undersized lots, if the relief is granted, that's not up to me, that's up to this board. But typically, the applicant comes in and says, well, this is the kind of house I want to build, and this is the height that I'm going to limit it to. And one of the things we know, because the setbacks on the sides are smaller, the height matters, right? Because it has a bigger impact on the neighbor. So limiting that height and agreeing to make it a hard number is significant from the township's perspective. So understanding you haven't come forward with a picture and said, this is exactly what we're going to build. Are you comfortable making it a condition that it's going to be similar in style to the one across the street and with a hard height number?
Yeah, similar in style for sure, and a hard height number. My engineer has just advised, however, that the height in this particular township is measured at peak. So we need to be careful. I don't know that 24's, 27's the right number. I think it might need to be something greater, but the objective is to blend and not to stick out.
What is the ordinance for height?
35 feet
35 feet.
and 2.5 stories. I mean, so, I mean, I think we're talking about just a typical 2-story building with a roof, peaked roof on top of that. So I'm not quite sure the exact height, but it would probably put you close to around 30 or so. Correct. I believe the building height's based on the mean grade around the building. So it may be taller in the back, but it would have to meet the zoning of less than 35 feet based on the mean grade around the building. So if it's lower in the back, then that all gets averaged in.
Okay. Other questions? Statement? Sure.
James, may I have one, please? May I have one of those, please?
I can get you.
Here. We can share.
Yeah, we can share it here.
We're gonna mark this protest and read
Yes.
exhibit number 2, the record.
Okay.
Brief 2.
Okay. So, thank you again for letting me speak here. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is James Reef. I live next door to, this property at 122 Chestnut Street. My property literally is butted up against the property line. There are pictures in the back, picture photo 1 and 2. And the back page will show you how close my driveway is to this property line. Literally, my side of my driveway is the property line. I'm here as a concerned adjacent property owner to express my strong opposition to the variance requested by the applicant for this proposed development. My property and the character of our neighborhood will directly and negatively be impacted if these are granted. In my opinion, this is my opinion, I don't believe a true hardship exists. This is based on personal design preference rather than property limitation. If there is a hardship, it was self-created when they purchased this property back in 17. They had to be aware of the restrictions of the property to 3 lots. My wife talks a lot about needs and wants. Like when I'm going to buy something online or at the store, she says to me, is that a need or a want? It's usually a want, not a need. So I know the gentleman put a letter in my mailbox stating that he wants to build this house for his mother, for her to live in, which is great. And we welcome her in our neighborhood. We'd love to have her as a neighbor. But it'd just be so much easier just to refurbish the house that's there already, or demolish it, build a new house. If that's the case, just building the house and having a place for his mother to live. And like I said, we welcome her in the neighborhood. So that's a need and want. This isn't a need, this is a want. Again, I've been turned down by my wife 100 times because I want to buy something because it's a need and a want. It's usually a want. So the applicant actually requested 3 significant dimensional variances from the zoning. It also includes the B1, which is the zoning ordinance requires a lot area not less than 12,000 square feet and a frontage of at least 80 feet. The current lot is only 5,000 square feet and has a frontage of just 40 feet wide. Means the lot is a less than half the required size and half the required frontage. Building on such an undersized parcel combined with the other requested variances and testifies the negative impacts on the neighborhood density, open space, and overall residential character. Regarding B3, subsection B3, zone allows a building area of no more than 20% of lot size. This is almost 25%. Is a substantial overage for such a small, narrow lot. Result in an oversized, out of character structure that will appear crowded and visually dominant on the parcel, unlike other homes in our neighborhood. Regarding B6, requires a minimum of 15 feet on each side. The applicant proposed 10 feet on our side and only 7.5 on the other. A 10-foot setback from my property line is just unacceptable. It's going to cause severe negative impact on our privacy, sight lines, eliminating any sense of privacy, light and air, reducing natural light and air circulation to my house, my living room, my kitchen, my back porch, my deck. And then fire safety, when you got a house that close to each other, there's always a dangerous proximity, increasing hindering emergency access, increasing risk of fire spread. And then drainage, potential for increased stormwater runoff directly onto my property and the neighbors to the rear of the property. Also, their plan calls for installing a 6-foot vinyl fence along the property line that's basically butted up against my driveway. My driveway is only 10.5 feet wide. So if you look at photos 6 and 7 on the back page, you'll see that I won't be able to open my car door if that fence is put there. Because their picture, you'll see the picture of my car with the doors open where it goes probably a foot into the property. So I have a very skinny driveway next to their property. Another concern is always the erosion and the sediment. It's a serious concern due to soil disturbance, runoff, and slope of the property. It's just site disturbance and soil exposure, impact on adjacent property, which includes the downhill runoff into the property behind it. Also storm drain and infrastructure clogging and environmental regulatory concerns. The minimum on this project should be required to submit a follow-up form of erosion sediment control plan approved by the township or the Delaware County Conservation District. So I mean, those are the variance related concerns I have, but the bigger concern that I don't think the gentleman owner is aware of this, and I don't think he would have been, and I'm sure the board's not aware of this, but I was informed by neighbors who lived in that neighborhood for years and years that there were not one but 2 in-ground pools on that property, and they were filled in with debris and dirt and junk and then leveled off. So I mean, you have to admit that could be a problem when it comes to construction. I don't know how true it is. I know for a fact there were 2 in-ground pools there from neighbors. I know they were filled in, and there's speculation for one neighbor that a family member of the previous owner owned a demolition company and filled it in with a lot of demolition and then covered it with topsoil. So if that is the case, I think that's a serious concern. Obviously, it's just common sense here, just instability and the environmental hazard that it could cause. What kind of junk is there, what's in the debris, raises serious issues of geotechnical and environmental concerns about the potential soil contamination, groundwater pollution, and the presence of hazardous material. So I think proceeding with this application without fully addressing and remediating the serious undisclosed condition would be reckless and irresponsible. I respectfully request that the zoning board, the minimum, require the applicant to obtain a certified geotechnical study and conduct independent professional soil testing to should assess the environmental safety and load bearing capacity of their maintenance soil before any construction permit is approved. So I think that's a pretty serious issue that needs to be addressed. Just to talk about some of the applicant's claims about being a harmonious match. I had to respectfully disagree. House taking up nearly 25% of a 5,000 square foot lot with only a 7.5 foot side yard, and a lot size half what's required does not harmoniously match the established character of our R3 zone community. Our neighborhood back there in Newtown Heights is defined by a certain level of green space separation between homes, which this plan fundamentally violates. You know, while the lot size may be pre-existing, the hardship here is, I believe, self-created by the applicant's decision to propose a dwelling that is too large and poorly suited for the existing zoning constraints on this property. They're not asking to build a modest R3 compliant home. They're asking for an oversized home on an undersized lot that requires extreme relief from multiple zoning requirements. You know, if this really is, you know, a house for his mother, which we welcome her as a neighbor. I mean, it could be renovated. The house that's there now could be renovated or demolished and a new house can be built. That's truly the easiest thing to do on this property. That's truly what this house is for his mother. Okay, again, I'll say it 3 times. We welcome her in our neighborhood. You know, I worked in the public sector for over 3 decades, and while I truly want to believe the applicant's stated intent, you know, is to build this for his family, but I really have a healthy degree of skepticism about this, and, you know, especially since the size a lot and in scope and the variances, and just in my view, it appears likely that this is going to be to maximize resale value and generate significant financial gain. Okay, so again, needs and wants. In my personal opinion, I think this is going to be a house that's going to be built and then turned over and resold, and he's going to make a lot of money on it. If it was just for his mother, easiest thing to do is renovate the house there now, or demolish it and build a home on that lot. You know, we talked about the previous house that was built back in 2017 that looks just like this. You know, just because the zoning board 10 years ago, whatever it was, approves this, doesn't mean it's right. Okay, because there's that whole neighborhood back there has a lot of lots. And if this continues, that whole Newtown Heights neighborhood is just going to be wall-to-wall houses if we keep on doing this. This is a beautiful neighborhood back there. We love living back there. I know they talked about harmonious and, you know, it's reasonable use. It's usually always coming from people who don't live there telling us that. You know, it's always an outsider saying, hey, it's going to be reasonable, it's going to be harmonious, I promise you. And then in my previous job, we always find out that when it's built, said and done, the owners never really follow through who's going to live there, and then that's what causes neighbor disputes. So again, it's all about needs and wants. For all these reasons, particularly the severe and unaddressed issue of the buried pools filled with junk and debris, and the excessive variances that are detrimental to our neighborhood, I urge the Newtown Township Zoning Hearing Board to deny this application on its entirety. Thank you for your time and consideration of my concerns.
If I may respond, please, as the applicant, I'd like to make some concluding arguments, and I'll be brief.
Well,
One
can we
sec,
wait and
yeah,
see
let's-
if there's more?
Sure, I'm sorry.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Appreciate the detail.
So I'd just like to hit some points here as we conclude. In R1, the letter that was dated June 10th, so it was written 9 days ago, received by the township, what looks like yesterday. Mr. Reef concluded that the applicant has not demonstrated a valid legal basis for the requested relief. I'm not sure how that legal conclusion was reached more than a week ago, but I think tonight we certainly demonstrated a valid legal basis for the grant of 2-dimensional variances. At the outset, I explained the reasonableness, the modest nature of this house, of this application, and I stand by that. This is very minimal relief requested for an undersized lot. His letter goes on to suggest that no unnecessary hardship exists. Hardships exist. It is a pre-existing legal nonconformity. It is undersized by more than half of its otherwise required area. Our expert engineer, through unrebutted sworn testimony, explained the nature of those dimensional hardships. So hardships do exist. The hardships are not self-created. We didn't subdivide, we didn't design, we didn't create these hardships. It won't compromise aesthetics of the neighborhood because it's going to blend beautifully with the neighborhood, as the documentation depicts. On page 2 of that letter, number 4, Mr. Reef explains that the lot is only 40 feet wide, while the zoning ordinance requires a combined 35 feet of side yard setbacks. He states, quote, "This leaves virtually no buildable width without violating the code," close quote. That's our case. That makes our case right there. We can't build a compliant home without violating the code. That is why we are here. That is why we seek 2 modest dimensional variances. That is the mere purpose for the zoning hearing board's existence and this application process as a whole. It goes on to speak about character and precedent. Well, we've hit that point home with Exhibit A6. And reasonable use is not still possible as he suggests. The R1, the R2, and the R3 zoning districts contemplate first and foremost single-family detached dwellings. They also allowed public schools, parochial schools, churches, religious uses, municipal buildings, and municipal uses. We're not proposing any of those things. We're proposing the most reasonable use for this property. And in conclusion, again, I brought this up at the outset. You can consult with your solicitor, but every property owner who owns land in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is entitled with the legal right to make reasonable use of his or her property pursuant to the PAMPC, as well as a long line of Pennsylvania case law decisions. I'll provide one citation, 309 Atlantic 3rd, 226. So what this truly comes down to is the reasonableness of the application. To my client's dismay, I have advised him that he needs to scale down his hopes and wants for this property. I have sat here for 3 successive months and I have heard one applicant after another be encouraged to come back the following month with a smaller scaled project for swimming pools and for houses. We didn't want to play that game and come back next month or the month after. We wanted to do it one time, we wanted to do it right, and we wanted to do it in the most reasonable and scaled back fashion as can provide for a single family detached dwelling use, as you heard our expert engineer testify to in unrebutted fashion. So I think it would be incumbent upon this board to grant these 2 dimensional variances, and we seek that relief, and we would be happy to entertain any conditions that we've discussed during our presentation. I'll address the 3 variances. No, I don't agree because the lot is undersized. I know you made your point about 12,000 square feet. We only have 5,000 square feet, and this is a legal concept, but it is a pre-existing legal nonconformity. The property already exists in a standalone fashion at 5,000 square feet. We have carefully looked at that. We do not require a dimensional variance for the size of the lot. So no, I cannot agree, and I think that you're wrong there.
Okay, thank you. So for your engineer and expert, would you agree, sir, that the 2 in-ground pools buried with trash and debris may be a problem? In your experience, 21 years working as an engineer, could it be a problem if that's been filling up with trash, debris, water, runoff? Is there some type of hazard that could occur? I mean,
That's why we have geotechnical engineers and
No,
they'd be part of the process.
would you agree it could be a problem?
No, I don't.
You don't think it's a problem at all?
I don't know the conditions, but I don't believe it could be.
No problem at all, okay.
Okay, appreciate everyone's detail, appreciate everyone's comments. We will take them into consideration. We're not going to make a decision on this tonight. I'm going to go ahead and close the record. Appreciate the willingness to consider any conditions put on this. Absent of a full plan, I don't know the concessions that you've already made to your last comment there, but to encourage collaboration and some coordination and thinking about a plan that a consideration would be amenable between you all. But we have 45 days to render a decision. We're not going to make that tonight. We will make it within that time frame. And anything else you want to address at this point? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please adjourn.